All right. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logo. And today we have an open panel, and we're going to be discussing who is the worst conservative, or at least worst actor or commentator or politician in the conservative movement. There's plenty to choose from. I don't know why my software is still not working, and so I apologize. The intro music, I can't get the graphics to work. I'm going to have to focus on that. I have no idea what's going on. But anyway, this is an open panel, so the link is already available in the video description. Let me share that out with you guys here in the, so here we go. So you guys see the link. I just posted the link in the live chat here. So if you guys want to join, please do so. Please do so. We are now live, and we got a whole list to choose from, guys. I've already saw a few people make some comments in the live chat. I probably agree with many of them. You know, in regards to who's the worst in the conservative movement, you know, I have my own personal preference. Who I think the one that I probably can stand the least, I'd have to say for myself, is Ben Shapiro. And I think Ben Shapiro is, again, Israel first. I think that he is flip-flopped on many of his different positions. You can look back at how he was, you know, he was so anti-Trump in 2016, and then all of a sudden he flipped, and now he was a great Trump supporter because, you know, Trump moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, which is all part of prophecy. If you if you're Jewish and you believe that the Messiah is coming, so I believe Ben Shapiro, and I'll tell you what, who's really been making a run for it is Jeremy Boring. I don't know, did you guys see the tweets, or what do you ever call them, a post on X with Jeremy Boring, who is the CEO of Daily Wire, talking about how if you question America, if you question 9/11, if you question the vax, if you question all these different things about the military-industrial complex, you're anti-American. Obviously, there's been a recent controversy between the Daily Wire and Candace Owens, and there was supposed to be some type of scheduled debate between Candace and Ben, but I guess that has been no longer in the works. From my understanding, again, that spat, I think that was like 2 weeks ago, going back and forth, is Ben Shapiro basically told her that he would host a debate on the Daily Wire in his studio, but she had to be there like at 5:30 on a Monday, and she was in England, of which apparently Jeremy Boring knew that they were. So there's that. So I think my personal opinion, I wouldn't say all of Daily Wire. Obviously, Matt Walsh had the What is a Woman documentary. Okay, I think that was fairly good, very popular amongst the boomers and the normie crowd. Michael Knowles, not exactly my cup of tea. Very much feels like sort of the Ivy League, you know, well-to-do type of family guy. I mean, not that he's a Family Guy, but it seems like, I don't know his story, but it seems like he kind of comes from that echelon, was a Yale student. So I don't have the biggest beef with Matt Walsh and Michael Knowles, but Jeremy Boring and Ben Shapiro specifically. But did you see on Jeremy Boring, his Wikipedia page got changed? If you go to his early life section, um, I believe he's been open about it, that he is a Christian, but he's Jewish. And his early life section on his Wikipedia page got changed right after he tweeted uh, about how you're anti-American if you question all this stuff. And then he was still talking about the success of the jibby jabs, which we know are tied to all these different problems. So I don't think those two are serious actors that you can trust whatsoever. But I got more. I'm curious what people think about Glenn Beck. I've never been a big Glenn Beck guy, but if you remember back in the Obama era, he was kind of the conspiracy conservative guy on Fox News and connecting all this stuff with Acorn and the birth certificate, of which, okay. But he's Mormon. He has Blaze TV. Apparently, he has been limited, some of his content creators, on what they're allowed to talk about and what they're allowed to say. So I'm curious what some of you guys think about Michael Knowles is Jay. Michael Knowles is Jay Dyer from Timu. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. Blue Skittles says Glenn Beck endorsed Hillary. I'm not surprised. I mean, who Ted Cruz was the big supporter of Ben Shapiro in 2016. Did you guys see that Ted Cruz apparently just dumped like $500,000 worth of stock from Goldman Sachs, of which his wife is like a high financial advisor? She's somewhere in the top bureaucracy of Goldman Sachs. So of course, insider trading. And how many times have we heard Ted Cruz go on and on about the border? Well, what has he done? Absolutely nothing. In fact, the Senate just passed, what was it, 91 or $94 billion to go to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. Meanwhile, we have an open southern border. So, these content creators, ridiculous. Tucker Carlson, I saw somebody said that Tucker Carlson is the worst, and I'd have to disagree. Now, I'm not a Tucker Carlson stan. I'm not here to defend everything Tucker Carlson has to say. But if you watched his most recent interview, was talking a little bit about demographics and some of the anti-white stuff coming out of the universities. I don't know if many of the other content conservatives in the movement talking about that, but we all know that Tucker has ties to the CIA. His dad worked for the CIA. And he pretty much said the general, conservative consensus until really about 2 or 3 years ago. Until he got on Fox, but it was really in the last 4 years that he really has kind of come out against many of the mainstream narratives. So I'm sure some of you guys may hate Tucker Carlson. Again, this is an open panel, guys. So hop on. We don't have anybody on yet. Again, that link is in the video description. Let me share that out with you guys again. We got Ivan out there. Is Jose out there? We got anybody that can hop on. This is free. As long as when you come on, just keep it TOS appropriate, guys. I know there's a lot of spicy topics that could potentially be brought up. So just be aware that we are on YouTube, and when you come on, just keep it a little TOS appropriate. But Jorgen throws in $10, says Glenn Beck is the reason I never trusted Trump, and he had very good reason. And he had very good reason why. Then Glenn Beck totally flip-flopped immediately after the election, and I learned not to trust him either. Yeah, I agree. And I'm not here to defend Trump. We could get into that. Maybe some of you guys think Trump's the worst in the conservative movement. I have a few more names that we can go through, but I'll tell you my general opinion, because somebody mentioned, well, why don't you talk about who's the best in the conservative movement? And I would say that Christ is the best in the conservative movement. So my politics is informed by my Orthodox Christian faith. And so when it comes to issues like abortion or national sovereignty or property or the opportunity to build families and the promotion of nuclear families and having children, like this is all informed by my theological beliefs. And I know that Mike Johnson, who I have as listed as one of the worst in regards to the political scene, I have, Lindsey Graham, Mike Johnson, Greg Abbott, and I'm going to speak to a little bit about that in just a second. But, for me as an Orthodox Christian, my politics is formed by my theology. And so when we're looking for who's the best in the conservative, well, it's Jesus Christ. If we all just actually upheld our faith and promoted our values through our political action, we don't need somebody to save us. Christ has already saved us. It's really about us embodying those virtues and putting those forth in society. That'd be my general opinion in regards to that. So I think we don't really need to focus on who's the best, because it's really informed by Christ. But I also include in the thumbnail, if you saw, Andrew Tate, because, is he part of the conservative movement? I don't know. Certainly, it seems like he's incredibly influential among some of the young men and the growth of Islam, unfortunately, in the West. And I am no fan of Islam as an Orthodox Christian. But again, if we look at Andrew Tate, certainly he gets some of the conspiracies right, some of the happenings around in society correct. But he's also a polygamist. I don't know if he's officially married, but he has multiple baby mamas, and he promotes having multiple baby mamas. And, that's not Christian, and that's not conservative. And the fact that he made his money off, webcam services of luring lonely men into the belief that some beautiful girl with big breasts on a webcam is going to be their girlfriend, like, that's immoral. And so, to me, he as a person is incredibly immoral, and I don't see him as a paragon of virtue in any way. Now, another name I had, and if you saw in the thumbnail, is Kanye West. So Kanye West just had a recent interview, which I didn't watch the whole thing. I can hardly listen to that guy. This is a little of a divergence, but when Kanye West, I did like the Jesus is King album. I wasn't a big fan of Donda. He had a couple good songs there, but you could see him sort of veering away from that Christ is King message. And now he wants to build, was it Yeezy Porn or Yay Porn Company, Yeezy Porn LLC or something like that. He's been posting about. So, they went after Kanye West. He said a lot of controversial things. He was never that intelligent. I never bought the whole conservative thing about how Kanye is some, hidden genius. Yeah, maybe he's really gifted with music or creating beats and sampling. He was really big in including like 60s, 70s, 80s samples into hip hop beats. But you can hardly listen to that guy speak and think that he's incredibly intelligent. Like, what's going on? Yeah. Jesse says Kanye was reprogrammed. I mean, they clearly got to him in one way or another. So he marries that woman, Bianca. And which I'm not sure. Maybe you guys can clarify. I believe that she's Jewish. And so he had that whole thing about loving Hitler, went on Alex Jones, had all those controversies, and was still promoting Christ, was still promoting Christianity, generally speaking. Was posting icons of St. Moses the Black. If you're an Orthodox Christian, we all love St. Moses the Black and appreciate his martyrdom for the church. But then he gets with this Bianca chick. He's always going out in public with her, like, where she's pretty much naked. I mean, like, almost quite literally naked, like, with see-through clothing. She's wearing like thongs and like pasties over her nipples. And now he wants to create a porn company. And I saw in one conversation, not incredibly recent, maybe it was a few months ago, where he said that Jesus didn't help him in his time of need or something. I mean, I don't know, but in the interview, he did say he's still like pro-Trump, pro-conservative, pro-MAGA. But I mean, the guy's a degenerate. The guy is a degenerate. I mean, how can you go from, what was it, 2020, 2021, telling everybody about the evils of pornography and why we all have to stop doing it? Now he wants to create his own porn company and he wants a star in it. I mean, come on. So another person I have on the list is Sean Hannity. I'm not a big Sean Hannity fan, right? I'm not a big Fox News in general fan, but Sean Hannity wears his little CIA badge when he's live on Fox News, and he always has the worst neocon normie conservatives on that do nothing at all for our country, and they're always about to get somebody, right? The whole thing about the Russia collusion, it was always getting ready to, somebody's getting ready to go to jail. Mueller's getting ready to go. Nothing happens. I mean, Sean Hannity is one of the, like, to me, another very irritating one of these conservative commentators, where he's always about to, he's always on the leading edge of prosecuting somebody, or coming to the conclusion of some type of Democratic conspiracy, and then nothing ever happens. I know Jesse Waters has been he's the conservative on Fox News that has filled the role of Tucker Carlson. So he's taken over Tucker Carlson's slot. I'm not a big Jesse Waters fan. I don't think he's incredibly intelligent. He basically just can read a monitor. He's a handsome guy. I think he cheated on his wife with his new wife or something of that nature. So again, not exactly a paragon of virtue either. And my problems with Donald Trump is that he's not very Christian. So yeah, Trump says things that I agree with. I think I love that he's not politically correct. But come on, he's not exactly emblematic of my Orthodox virtues and Christian faith either. So Pim says Hannity looks like an Ewok. Yeah, I could see that. I can see that. So guys, again, this is an open panel. So anybody wants to hop on, you want to tell me who exactly you think is the worst, or maybe you think that I got something wrong here, feel free. That link is in the video description. It's also in the live chat. Let me share that also on my other YouTube channel. Oh, it is. Okay, I've already put it up there. So if you guys want to hop on, you want to let me know what you think, feel free. And no, you don't have to be Orthodox to come on. So let me just highlight a few super chats real quick. Unfortunately, guys, my software is not working, so I can't pull up the Streamlabs onto the screen. I have no idea why it's doing that. But Riley Keller throws in $10. He says, despite being as fake and astroturfed as one could possibly be, I'd say that Konstantin Kisin, he's very submissive, clearly motivated by revenge for the expulsion of his oligarch father from Russia by Putin in the early 90s. Yeah, he's the one that is with the other, British guy, and they're the ones that are always kind of hammering the radical left and stuff. I could see that. Riley. And Storm the Cat throws in $5, says, I don't trust Ben Shapiro. He's shielded for the jab, and he made anti-white comments. Yeah. For me, another guy that's in the sphere that I can't stand very much, but I wouldn't say he's the worst. He really doesn't have that much influence. But, if you guys have ever watched the Patrick Bet David podcast, he has a guy named Adam Sosnick on there, and he thinks he's like an Andrew Tate type figure in the manosphere, and talks about masculinity and dating. And that dude is such a goober. I cannot stand to listen to Adam Sosnick. Now, I don't think he's the worst in the conservative movement. I mean, he's been a lifelong Democrat, but now he's adjacent to the conservative movement through PBD, and I cannot stand that guy. Is so dumb. Adam Sosnick is so dumb. I can't listen to that dude. I mean, Patrick Bet David, I'm curious what you guys think of him. He has a lot of things that I would agree with. He seems to be a traditionally masculine guy. He kind of wafers back and forth. I remember one time he was on Joe Rogan and basically legitimated the 2020 election, which I'm not going to get into that because of YouTube, but I think there's some serious questions regarding the election. So I'm not a huge PBD fan, and I question kind of where he comes from as well, me personally. But I'm curious what you guys think. Another one I have is Dennis Prager. So the Prager University. I don't know if you guys I saw clips of his recent debate between Chuck Yeager and Dave Smith. And I just saw a few clips with Dave Smith. He got annihilated. He got absolutely annihilated on the Israel-Palestine debate. So, I think you could make a case for Dennis Prager, although me personally, I'm going to go with Ben Shapiro. I think Ben Shapiro's probably my least favorite out of the conservative commentators. I know some people don't like Candace Owens. They think she's a grifter. I think she said some good things. She may be a grifter. I'm not sure. Don't know her, but she certainly challenged the sort of normative narrative in multiple ways that I think is beneficial. So yeah, and then we have politicians that I'll let me check the dono chat real quick, see if anybody threw anything on the dono chat. So guys, again, this is an open panel. This isn't a monologue. I'm waiting for somebody to hop on here. So if you guys want to share your thoughts, please do so. Anybody is welcome to come on. I just ask that you keep it TOS appropriate. Obviously, we know which topics we have to avoid. But come on, come one, come all. System Blower throws in $5. Says PBD yelling at Anthony Weiner about his dingoling was hilarious. I have seen that one. That's why PBD's done some good stuff, and he's made a few. I just don't. It's just not my thing. In regards to conservative, I don't get my opinions from Patrick Bet David. That's for sure. Somebody says Pearl would he need near the top? I think Pearl would be near the top. I don't have a strong opinion about Pearl. I know she's friends with the Wilsons and she followed me on X, but my only thing with Pearl is she's not the most articulate and well-informed person on the topics that she discusses, and she is a bit of a troll, right? So she does a lot of engagement farming and stuff like that. So it is what it is. I don't even see Pearl as really a conservative conservative commentator per se. It's really just the whole manosphere red pill dating shtick, which let's face it, like somebody like Rollo Tomasi is way more articulate and informative on those topics than Pearl is. But God bless her. I wish that her Catholic faith informed more of the opinion she has. But hey, that's neither here nor there. Ortho Cuber, been a COTEL crew member for 2 months. Thank you so much, brother. Just renewed his membership. Said, have you seen the Ultimate Alpha Male by Freedom Tunes? It's hilarious, but it also shows that the manosphere is far from conservative. Well, I would agree. It's not very conservative in my opinion. And that's where, I think I just posted a video. It's going to be up on the website here very soon. And it is me talking about, I got my own little take. I'm not going to talk about it here just because, again, not wanting to violate any TOS, but on the Palestinian protest, we're seeing the National Guard being advocated by Congressman Mike Johnson. We saw Greg Abbott, who I have right here. Both Mike Johnson and Greg Abbott I have as potentially some of the worst in the conservative movement as regards to the political side. Now you'd say, Greg Abbott, I thought he's a great conservative governor. Well, is he? Is he? How long has he been dealing with the border? Does he do anything about it? He seems like he's only forced to save face. You look at what Oklahoma just issued a law that if you're an illegal immigrant and you are found in Oklahoma, you can be jailed and you are not allowed to come back to the state. So, Abbott could have done something like this. Of course he doesn't. And he has a pretty good AG and Ken Paxton, but Abbott talking about how he wants to prosecute these college kids that are protesting for Palestine for hate speech. This is ridiculous. And you look at the ban on TikTok, you look at this push for hate speech laws in regards to specific demographics in the United States. Very interesting. Very interesting. So we got somebody just hopped on here. What is Nadam? What's going on, bro? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me? I think you're muted, man. I can't hear you. Your audio may not be hooked up. There we go. I think I can hear you now. Hello?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
What's going on, man? What are your thoughts on the topic? Who do you think are some of the worst in the conservative movement?
I mean, it's obviously like for me, it's Ben Shapiro. You know, it's like
that's kind of my
it's
my
like it's
my
like an
stance as well.
obvious one. You know, like
Yeah, and you
even
can
his
get
voice
into the reasons, but just we're on YouTube, so if you could skirt the TOS,
oh yeah,
yeah.
sure,
But
sure.
you can
No,
go ahead and explain why you dislike Ben Shapiro.
I mean, his main view is like Israel, Israel, Israel. It's like his agenda is like to glorify Israel and like put down every other nation, and also like putting the higher pedestal of Jews. Like the Jews have this like untouchable. What can I say? Like this untouchable bubble that like no one can touch. It's like if you ever say something bad about this particular area, you're anti-Semitic,
Right.
and so
Well,
I
and
think
we've
he
seen
shields
that
himself with this. He's like a fake conservative, you know.
since October 7th. We've seen a really hard push on if you're anti-Zionist or you criticize Zionism, that now equates you with being anti-Semitic, which is
Yeah,
kind of hard to wrap your mind around, given that there's many Orthodox Jews that are anti-Zionist, and yet
exactly.
somehow they're now anti-Semitic. I mean, it
Most of
shows
them,
you the
like,
agenda at hand here.
and I think they're happy in New York, you know, in the streets of New York. I don't
Yeah,
think they even want to leave, you know.
right.
So yeah, and like it's weird because I'm Lebanese and I'm Orthodox, and
Oh, glory to God, brother. I was going to ask you
yeah,
what your religion was. So
yeah, no,
excellent. Glory to
yeah,
God, bro.
I was baptized as a child, so glory to God. Um, and um, and like it's weird because people think in the US that like a Christian is supposed to support Israel, and I'm like,
Right.
it's never been. It's
No.
I think especially like Orthodox Christian are the most against Israel. Like it's crazy. Like I'm talking particularly in Lebanon, so. It's we're in proximity with them, and we like our eyes are more open. It's easier for our eyes to see what's happening there. It's like it was more obvious since I'm a child. Like it's common knowledge that Zionism is not a religious movement. It's a expansionist, atheistic movement that's been created to lower lower every other part of the society other than Jews,
Right.
yeah,
And Father Turbo, Serbian Orthodox priest here in the United States, I've had him on multiple streams, and
I
he made a
met him.
point that, once you become an Orthodox Christian, one of the things you have to let go of is Zionism,
Exactly.
because it denies the theology that the church is Israel, because we uphold the second covenant. And so we are now the true temple. We are the true church. We are the true body of Christ. And so we see again that I think that's what is again behind the TikTok ban, is because the proliferation of anti-Zionist ideas amongst the young. But anyways, Andrew, what's up, brother? Long time no see.
Yeah, it's been quite a slog trying to get a whole bunch of this stuff done recently, but a whole bunch of publications are up. I would just like to throw everybody under the bus who's a conservative or pretending to speak as one. And I mean, we talked about this in one of the geopolitical meetings a couple months ago when I was on top of my membership stuff.
Right.
But with all the stuff that has been written about the woke movement and the left, as an ex-lefty, as my business partner being an ex-lefty who attended the first social forum, there's been 20 years now of direct Venezuelan communist infiltration and subversion in this country. The social forums have been going on for 20 years. Most people don't even know what they are. Finally, in Next Gen Marxism by Mike Gonzalez and Catherine Gorka, chapter 8, which strangely enough doesn't read like any other chapter of the book, because all of the research is co-opted from Ariel and was obtained under disingenuous circumstances. That's the first time the social forums are mentioned, and it's our research. And these were conventions, week-long conventions of tens of thousands of communists and socialists, many of them in the US, where the BLM riots were planned, where all these violent actions were planned over decades. When Chavez took power in '99, they made it a point to ally with Cuba, who inherited the other than the US and our allies, the most sophisticated intelligence apparatus in the Western Hemisphere. They were cut off because the Soviet Union fell. They didn't have any money. Well, now they have this infusion of oil money from Venezuela and a leader willing to bring that stuff to the table again and enact Castro's dream of recreating the Soviet Union in South America. And the social forums were essentially the means by which the greatest transfer of organizational technology was accomplished from successful leftist revolutionary governments, actors, government officials, etc., to domestic U.S. groups that have enacted the same strategy here of getting somebody to power through a bunch of disparate groups rather than the united front that we saw in the last century. And all of this foreign stuff, decades of meetings of tens of thousands of people, not a peep about it. And we're trying to bring it out to the surface. We wanted to stay anonymous, like neither of us wanted to start a startup because we've lost all our friends, colleagues, etc., and our lives are freaking essentially in danger. These people are connected to cartels and the border and whatnot. And yeah, they're paying absolutely zero attention to it. So it's time to start embarrassing them directly. And we're soon going to be releasing a study and the correspondence that we had with Sage, the largest publisher of academic journals in the English language, that shows how deep they've infiltrated it, to where the people making the decision on the review board and the editor are responsible for whether or not to withdraw or uphold an article that called Castro Chavism a conspiracy theory, are neck deep in the damn conspiracy. So yeah, they've missed the biggest issue. They've they haven't been on the ball for 20 years, and now it would embarrass them to mention any of this because, well, they've looked past like writing a book about the Republican Party and not even knowing the RNC exists. And you're going to tell me you know about woke? So now if you bring that up, well, crap. So to save face, better to avoid personal embarrassment than to put information out there that we need to save the world. And I've been on fire because I've been working on nothing but this stuff for the past 2 weeks. So I apologize for my presentation, my shape, and all that, and for not taking a breath over the past 2 minutes. But I'm done now. And thank you all for the time and for hearing me out.
All good. I'm curious. So one of the things that you didn't mention, I'm curious, I know it's something of your concern, but you think the communist threat is greater than the Zionist threat, or is that also part of the false dialectics?
I absolutely, this is how that whole movement of movements that they've strategized shows the internal divisions, because Venezuela is buddies with Hamas and has hosted Hamas training camps. Iran has had Hezbollah fighters and sleeper cells there for freaking a decade or more. And so you've got those people that are allied with this leftist movement. And of course, that's going to be opposing the whole Zionist movement. I don't think the whole Jewish threat thing is anywhere near what people make it out to be. I think it's a wonderful scapegoat used by the groups that have been activated by the left that have Islamic sympathies. And so now you have Islam straddling the fence between the institutional support of the left and state actors like Venezuela, etc. And you've got like the right grunts at the bottom that, oh, at least they're traditional and etc. etc. So they think there can be a like Christo-Islamic alliance politically, and everybody's going to eat each other. So I think the false dialectic is probably the central narrative in all of this stuff.
All
But,
right.
and the way that everything's been organized as this hodgepodge obscures the heck out of it, which is why you get stuff like Queers for Palestine. So,
Mr. Westford, what's going on, brother?
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
And also Prodigal Lux, welcome. Are you able, Prodigal
Thank
Lux,
you.
to turn your camera on by chance?
Oh no, it's broken.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
So either one of you guys want to take it? What's your kind of thoughts on the topic? One I have written down that we haven't talked about is Steven Crowder.
Oh,
But
Yeah.
I was
what are your
gonna
guys'
talk
thoughts
about
on
him.
some of the worst in the conservative movement?
I was actually
Well-
gonna bring up Steven.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, just because of the whole thing with his wife and so on, what he did,
Yeah.
and acting like couldn't control his emotions and acting like a child, and he has this whole like manly image and so on that he's trying to sell, and he can't even control his emotions and so on. So yeah, that would be my first
Oh, your
first
one, yeah. Your first one is Steven Crowder.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr.
Yeah.
Westford, what about you, brother?
I mean, I'd probably agree with you if I had to about Ben Shapiro, but because I think there's so many boomers I know, especially even at my parish, that just talk about how great he is and they just kind of take everything he says. So I think he has a lot of like damage. But for me personally, have you ever heard of Benny Johnson? Every time I
Oh,
see that
yeah.
guy's face, it hurts my soul for some reason. I've never heard him say anything that could be conceived as like an independent thought. It's only just like catchphrases and buzzwords and like, let me tell you about this cringe liberal. And it's just, I don't know if he's genuine or if he's just trying to like ride the red wave or what, but that guy, he hurts me. Hurts my soul.
And I think that's a huge thing in regards to all the people that we mentioned is the sort of scapegoating of the left. And so always going about the left, and then this inability to criticize actually, people on the right and, like the hate speech laws. So the hate speech laws that are being passed in the most conservative states or red states like Florida and Texas. I mean, that law is what, at least according to the tweet that Greg Abbott posted yesterday, what he wanted to charge the Palestinian protesters, which, I mean, obviously you're not going to catch me on a college campus around those guys. And they're, they don't know what's going on. There's a video that came out like yesterday or 2 days ago in New York where they're asking these women that are at the protest, what are you protesting? They didn't even know. They had no idea what was going on. And so it's not like these people are highly informed. They're college kids. There's a lot of energy around this topic. But the fact that they were, that he used, what was it, the Texas State Police or something yesterday to go in there and like begin to arrest and want to charge them for hate speech. Like that goes right along with them criticizing Joe Biden about, the TikTok ban. Although it seems like a lot of conservatives have moved over that, oh yeah, we should because of China. Yet, who's talking about China buying up all the meat in the cattle in the United States? They own like a fourth of it now. All the housing market, the real estate market. Like if we were really concerned about China, they wouldn't be doing all that stuff. So the whole Chinese excuse for banning TikTok, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me in regards to everything else going on.
Yeah, and if I can add something, like the US has never been for free speech. Like it's obvious with like they're unraveling this with those college students and the Free Palestine stuff. Because if something goes against Israel, they go down and start beating on some university students. But if they protested against China, nothing would have happened. But if they open their eyes, China is already on the way to growth,
Right.
like a huge growth compared to the US. So I think that's been more obvious and obvious. Like it's been like what, a decade that everything has been getting more obvious and more obvious in the US. So
Right.
it's,
The gentleman that just joined, sorry, can't pronounce your name, but
No problem. Just pronounce George, like
I know. I see the
transliteration is
Dimitri.
George.
George. Okay. Well, welcome, brother. Where are you from?
I'm from Serbia right now.
Oh, beautiful Orthodox. Are you in Serbia?
Yes,
Well,
I'm
glory
in
to
Serbia.
God
Well,
protect
I'm in.
your people and your nation right now.
Thank you. I am in city called Mladenovac. It is near Belgrade, like one of area of the Belgrade.
So
I mean,
what are your thoughts?
well, my thoughts are that today, like left and right paradigm is completely wrong in a sense. Like
Right.
in Serbia right now, we have actually like third political party that is against vaccination. It is speaking about stuff, anti-gender politics and so on, and they are saying we don't need left and right. We need right people on the right places. And for me personally, like I see that inner state, so on local level, liberal like ways of social ways, it should be applied because people in the city know what they need socially. But when you go further, so on larger population, America have 300 million people. Like no one can agree on that level what they need. So they need values. They need something that hold them together, and it is not something material. It is abstract. So, and I believe that America forget that. Like they need some abstract values. They need Christianity.
Right.
That is foundation of that value. Like they forget that, and I believe that that is what they need to conserve. But to conserve, America need to become Christian again. Like you cannot have foundation. You cannot have foundationless society. You need society with foundation. So conservative is maybe bad word. Maybe it should be foundationalist, like someone that preserve foundation and not just conserve, because it is silly. Like every 10 years, conservative is liberal of 10 years ago.
No,
Like,
I absolutely agree with the point you're making. And the goal of the open panel today was try to pinpoint some of the more subversive individuals.
yeah, and I believe that Steven Crowder, I am following that politics and stuff like that. I mean, if you look at his situation, like his wife, as much I understand, is right now working with most liberal like advocates, like
His ex-wife is. I think they're getting a divorce.
Yeah, they are getting, and she using a liberal, not prosecutor, but someone that is on person side when they are in court.
Gotcha.
What you call that in
like
English?
a lawyer?
Lawyer. Yeah. She's using her lawyers, and if you look at their like statement, they say that they need someone that is already in conservative circles and that they know how to stir the pot. So what they are, they know how to affect conservatives. So right now at this moment, because I see that she's using his old partners, so people that work for him, and she's basically manipulating right now. For me, when we see that someone is using manipulation, we should not care what other person is doing.
Sure.
That
No, I agree with you. I don't know if his wife makes much content, but in regards to the point you're making about America, I've made this point before about the identity crisis, where in a country like Serbia, you guys are unified by language, history, ethnicity, and a sort of national identity, where in America, that's all been destroyed for us. And so there really isn't anything that unifies Americans. And in absence of religious unification, I think that political unification has come to fill that void. And that's why so many Protestants in our country really have a sort of politico-theological framework on how America, how they involve themselves and participate in the American political process. And this is where we get, Trump as the God Emperor, and and these ideas that, the founding fathers are like Protestant saints for some Americans. And so what's happened is in America, we don't have a unified identity, a national ethos, and this fracturing, and then the fracturing within the conservative, and this continual it's just, dialectics that help create more conflict. They always want to divide and conquer. And I think, unfortunately, because of the how large America is, both in population and space, they've been able to divide and conquer us more so than most other countries, unfortunately.
And I just want to make one point.
Go ahead.
It is much harder to remove them when they gain the power than to return. Like in Serbia right now, it is like 40 years after communism.
Right.
And their children are in power, so their children have like population is maybe 2 to 3% for their values, but because that structure was built in times of when there was communism in Serbia, like we cannot rid of them. Literally, you have them in the media, you have them everywhere. It is really hard.
Right.
And they are trying to do same thing in America. So if they gain the power, like it is like maybe 40, 50 years to put them down. Look at Russia. Like they needed 40 years to remove communists from power in Russia.
Right.
In
And we've
any
seen a religious revival in all the former Soviet nations too.
yes,
which has been allowed them to resist the New World Order to a degree that.
But they have
Western
their people in the media, like in time of communism, like high culture. High culture was like people, children. Like today, you have like Hollywood star having children being trans.
Yeah.
In communist Serbia and Russia, they had their children being put in to be actors, to be newsmen, and so on. So that children at that time are right now working in movies and so on, and you don't have a replacement of them, because you need like 10 to 20 years to educate new people.
No, I totally agree. I want to bring in Professor Chad and get some of the opinions of some of the other guys. T. Sanders throws in $5, says, thanks for the weekly streams. Well, thank you, T. Sanders, for the support. And Willie Jenkins, he makes his vote. He says, Steven Crowder gets my vote for worst, but they all obscure certain things in unison, like media pundits and politicians. It's controlled op. Absolutely agree with that. And then over on the Dono chat, Blue Skittles threw in $11. No comment. Well, thank you so much, Blue Skittle. And John Anon throws in $5, says, how does the recent fad of demonizing boomers add to the divide and conquer cultural Marxist psyop? How does it invert the orthodox phronema of honoring parents, elders, clergy, etc., under the guise of just joking? Sir, you can find, I'll just answer this real quickly, then we'll get back to the panel. I can see how criticizing boomers could be divisive. I don't know if it's so much of a Marxist cultural psyop, because one of the problems that millennials and Gen Zers are facing is the fact that wealth in the country and the opportunities aren't the same, and highlighting that boomers, generally speaking, because of their generational tendencies to believe television, they're the first generation with television. And I actually have a book right here by Brzezinski the Between Two Ages, which literally talks about the technocratic world order. He wrote that in the 1970, and highlighting that the generation that was raised with television will be highly manipulable towards their end goals. So I don't think criticizing boomers in general is an inversion of the orthodox phronema, in my opinion. I get your point, though. We absolutely should honor our parents and elders and clergy, but if they're in the wrong, I don't think there's anything inherently sinful of making a critical comment about the boomer perspective on the world. And I think there is a mass generational difference in regards to feelings for Israel, how exactly one is supposed to be able to purchase a house and get the whole 9-to-5 family, lifestyle that the boomers had, that, we in the West do not have that opportunity. So anyways, John Anon, thanks for the $5 super chat. Do appreciate it. You make a good point. I think it can be overblown, the criticism of the boomers, and it can be an inversion of the way in which we honor our elders. But at the same time, I don't think the boomers have done a great job in stewarding society and moving it towards a more Christian ethos either. So want to put that out there. But Professor Chad, you joined. What are some of your thoughts on the topic today?
First of all, David, I hope you're having a good Lent, and thanks a lot for
you,
letting me on your stream. Yeah, I think there's more to be said about Steven Crowder. I wanted to jump in because people already mentioned the thing that he's talks about being a good conservative man and a leader and head of the household, but then he doesn't seem to treat his wife or children very well, at least from what we've seen. That's been mentioned to death. But I think it's also really important to note that Steven Crowder, by his own admission, has had what he calls, his words, his bisexual phase. And
I did. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that, but I do remember seeing that clip he admitted.
Yeah. And if you look at the timing of when he said that on his show, it coincides with kind of trying to soften the blow. It looks like, I don't know his motives, but it just kind of seems to coincide with the timing of getting accused of sexual harassment by Not Gay Jared, Brian Callen, these other comedians that worked for him in the past and don't seem to have good things to say about the experience. So for a self-admitted bisexual struggling person to be so hypocritical as to take the piss out of the Skittles movement with these underground infiltration things, and then to use that as an opportunity to strong arm Not Gay Jared into kissing with him because it's just for the bit. And right. Brian Callen, Owen Benjamin have mentioned being put in these uncomfortable situations ostensibly for the purpose of edgy comedy. And it really bugs me, David, because we need edgy humor to subvert the wokeism, which is cultural Marxism. And so for someone like Steven Crowder to be taking the reins when he himself is needing help in these areas, it's annoying to say the very least.
Yeah.
I guess that explains all the cross-dressing jokes he made.
I really think, he's that 1 in a million. Leftists will try to cudgel us by saying like, oh, if anyone has any criticism of this, it's because they're a closet case. And that's, of course, ridiculous. But in Steven Crowder's case, it actually seems like it might be true.
Right.
But
I always thought it was weird. Go ahead.
But we cannot just say Steven Crowder. All that crowd is weird. Like Not Gay Jared, like accepting for him to be called that way, Not Gay Jared, implying that he's gay. Owen Benjamin.
I don't think that implies he's gay. I think the origin. Sorry to interrupt you. I think the origin of that is it's Steven talks to him. He calls one gay Jared and one not gay Jared. I could be wrong.
Okay, but again, the origin is something, but he was working 2 years for him, and everyone was listening. Not Gay Jared, and there were skits where he was acting like gay in the mall and so on.
Right.
Cross-dressing.
And he was accepting that, like Owen
Yeah.
Benjamin the same. Like
But I mean,
he
I could have
himself
fallen
said that
for that
that
trick. I could have fallen for that trick too, because if it's, I mean, I don't think that it's good to cross-dress even to make a joke, but I could see someone, well-intentioned person that's not gay, making that mistake because they think that it's a bit to take the piss out of it in like a Monty Python type of thing. And that's the way Steven Crowder presented it. And I wonder how much of the whole persona is a Potemkin village. But I don't think it's fair to say that because he had the not gay Jared, Brian Callen, Owen Benjamin, pretty much everyone has cross-dressed on those bits that they were that they had those kind of subversive Skittles intentions.
But wait,
It doesn't seem that way to me.
let's talk about Owen Benjamin. He himself claims that before he met Steven Crowder, he was bisexual. He had that phase where he thought
didn't
he
know that.
maybe was. Yeah. He was claiming that when he was going around with buses that he was doing a lot of stuff with men. They were naked and so on. Like he said that he was bisexual before he met Steven Crowder. So
I think
if we see that people around him are bisexual and so on, and maybe have that inclination, so he was.
Seems like Nadim has some.
So he was
knows something about
gathering similar people to
it's
him.
okay, you can finish.
So and what we're seeing right now is that chaos of them being, as I see, out bisexual coming out.
It's very peculiar because Owen Benjamin and Steven Crowder both have a lot of really good takes on a lot of culture war issues to do with Skittles often.
Right.
So I don't really know what to make of that.
I think all of this.
Neither of them are fully faithful Christians I mean, we know that Owen Benjamin's a heretic in regards to his
non-Trinitarian,
non-Trinitarian, I think Arian worldview, but I imagine with Steven Crowder also, it's hard to say how devout, and I don't want to make any claims about somebody's sincerity in regards to their faith, but I did always think that it was so weird that it took so long for him to have a child with his wife. Personally, but anyways, we had a couple super chats. Just want to hit those real quick. Pim Orsov throws in $20. Thank you so much, Pim. He says there is a big fracturing of American politics. Absolutely, a continental shift. That is absolutely the case. That's happening. The two parties are mirror image inversions of themselves. Two presidential inquiries, two wars. Do you think mainstream media, the wedge dividing the people? I'm not sure. What do you guys think about this in regards? Do you think the mainstream media is the wedge dividing the people? I mean, clearly it's malicious, and the point is to cause division and contention amongst the population.
Yeah, I think so. Because what I have to say won't take long. I'm really sorry.
Yeah,
I think so because kind of Bush was the proto-Trump as far as everyone all the mean girls deciding that he's the person to ostracize, right? And then to our great surprise, George W. Bush and Barack Obama, as far as policy, especially foreign policy and war, were kind of the same president. So it's really strange that the same people that hated George Bush love Obama and don't realize that they were the same.
Yeah, and I think it's part of the dumbing down of the American population is that they can't critically think and analyze candidates. The same thing's true with Trump, that you can applaud him on something that he does do that is beneficial for the country, or maybe makes a public statement, and then you criticize other aspects, and all of a sudden now you're anti-American and all this different stuff, and it comes from the conservative side of the aisle that will be the first one to criticize you for making again, if we're Christians, I don't know if everybody's Orthodox, but if we're Christians and I'm Orthodox, well, like I said, my faith informs the politics. And I think for the majority of Americans, unfortunately, their politics informs their faith. And we see that with that dispensationalist theology about worshiping Israel.
It's pragmatism. It's pure pragmatism. Like
And I think
only
there
go to church to talk to people about the Bible and listen to your preacher telling you like what happened in the world, or like they don't see like the separation of like church life with with political or like your actual life. So
that's interesting because the idea of the separation of church and state was baked into the United States founding by Freemasons, by the way. Supposedly with the intention of avoiding this kind of cult of personality, but the way people flock around a figure like a Trump, to where you're not allowed to agree with him on some things and disagree with him on others, which is supposedly what democracy is about. But we still prop up.
There's no.
We still
there's no
prop
middle.
up these like monarchic type figures, despite ourselves as voters, right?
And I've mentioned this before. One of the problems with secularism is it relativizes all religion as equal, and it essentially pushes it towards a self-help. So whatever works for you is good enough.
And what I was going to say
that's
is
one of the biggest things I think with the conservative movement that is that's like the danger of it.
Yeah.
You know, like especially like the Shapiro types.
Yeah.
Where it's like they kind of weasel their ways in. I think one person who isn't really talked about enough, even though I think maybe because he's not the biggest person, but is Bishop Barron.
Oh,
the Catholic.
I don't like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's like this. He's one of these like kind of
fence sitters.
If you look at him like right on, he's not that bad, but the more you look into it, you're like, that's kind of weird stuff
what's
going
his
on
name?
there. Just because like his answer to Shapiro is one of them.
Right.
You know, when Shapiro asks him, I'm a practicing Orthodox Jew, do I need to be Catholic or to be saved? And he's basically like, oh well, the Christian way is the privileged way, but it's like one of the many ways up the mountain.
Right.
Something like that on that Sunday Shapiro show.
Yeah, I remember what you're talking about back when.
Yeah.
And that was kind of.
And then like he has
Shapiro.
this, and so he is this like push back against the world, but when you look, the more I look into it, it's not by much. Like he still goes on stage with James Martin. He's moving. I think he's like one of the head faces of this thing that's like, it's vaguely against the world, but it's very, very comfortable with the world.
Right.
It's like I think
Jordan Peterson is one of those.
Yeah, Peterson is one of those too, but I don't know. I feel like he's like a bit of a clown now. Just a benzed out clown, but
Well, I want to bring in Jose and Ivan.
He's the most unclear guy ever about faith.
Yeah, he is difficult to follow sometimes. Patrick made a comment. He made his vote for Matt Walsh. He said Ben contradicts everything he says, yet Matt bends over and won't put his alleged faith first. And I can't disagree with that. When they fired Candace, one of the things that Ben would always say is, well, we have Matt Walsh and he doesn't think that America should send funding to any nation. Well, that's not exactly the same thing that Candace was doing in regards to criticism of Zionism. So to equate those two things is like, oh yeah, we're an open platform. I do think, like I said, with all these commentators in the conservative movement, none of them put their faith before their politics, except for Ben Shapiro. I mean, if we're going to be consistent, we could give him that credit at least. Like, he's pretty outspoken about his faith, and he does that definitely informs his politics. Whereas many of the American conservatives, it's the politics that inform their theology.
I think what Andrew Klavan had to say is very revealing. If you recall his video, because they sort of have him brainwashed into being a second-class Daily Wireer. And I worried for Matt Walsh. I think we should all pray for him, because he knows what side of the bread is buttered, but at the same time, he must be struggling seeing Andrew Klavan say such foolish things. For those who don't know, as that, what did he say? Oh, if you don't know the name of Christ, life is not a game show where if you know the word Jesus, you get saved, and if not, not. What a terrible take to say.
And
flippant way to dismiss.
What did the other thing he mentioned, that as Christians, it's anti-Semitic to tell a Jew to convert, because
That's what I mean, that he's
that will
brainwashed
cause
second
problems in their
class.
life.
Yeah.
And yeah,
God's got his boys right where he
wants.
wants them. That's what he said.
Yeah,
I'm
and-
never tell Ben Shapiro to come to Christ. He's got his boy right where he wants him.
Father Josiah Trenum says that if you face persecution even from your family for converting, then you're a warrior for Christ.
Right.
And so as a Christian, that's what we should pray that Ben Shapiro do.
Yeah, Father Josiah Trenum has been awesome lately. I would say in the last 6 months, all the content he's been putting out. And he just had, I watched a big interview he had over on like Blaze TV or something with some commentator who apparently recently converted to Orthodoxy, and had Father Josiah on. And he was very outspoken on a lot of controversial topics. And definitely appreciate that. And just want to give a thanks to Marcus Antonio for gifting 5 COTEL Crew memberships. Thank you so much, Marcus. And if anybody's out there is feeling generous, feel free to gift some COTEL Crew memberships for everybody in the live chat. I'm sure they would absolutely appreciate that. So nub waves are welcome. And then Storm the Cat threw in $5 and says, I think that when people recognize a problem, sometimes they go too far in the opposite direction. And one example of this is some people in the Zoomer generation who recognize the Zionist thing, and then they start thinking Islam is good, but it's bad too. Yeah, that's a huge, again, I actually wanted to talk about this. I don't know if I was going to make a stream on it, but something I've been reflecting on is, and it's really tied to the video that I just posted on the Palestinian protest and Zionism, is this false dialectic, in that they're, the average person just thinks in dualistic terms. And so if this is bad, well, then the opposite is good. It's like, no, if we're Orthodox Christians, like actually multiple things can be true at the same time. This could be bad and this could be bad. And neither one is one that is necessarily our side. But I want to bring in Jose and Ivan. So Jose, what's your thoughts on the topic, brother? I'm sure you got something insightful.
Yeah, so a thing to consider is that all media organizations, they're propaganda arms, and they're propaganda arms for someone who's funding them. And it doesn't take that much research to find out who's behind who. So, for example, people talk about Ben Shapiro and how the Daily Wire is supposedly his, and it isn't. The Daily Wire was founded, funded, and owned by Dan and Ferris Wilkes, who are 2 Texan oil billionaires, which is partially why I know them, because they influence a lot in Texan Texan state politics. So the thing is, essentially, that whole media organization is nothing but the media organization pushes to push whatever narrative it is that those brothers want to push. So in terms of like, who is it that fired Candace Owens? It wasn't Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro is a man who takes marching orders. He doesn't actually have any say in terms of how that organization is actually run. So in the case of Dan and Ferris Wilkes, why is it they're so diehard for Israel, despite being Texan? And though they're not themselves, they're not Jewish, at least not from anything that I could find, but they are part of a very weird cult out in West Texas, in rural West Texas, that is called, they call themselves the Assembly of Yahweh, Seventh Day. So it takes Seventh Day Adventism, as well as some elements of Church of Christ, combined with Arianism, because they deny Christ's divinity, as well as a whole lot of Jews for Jesus stuff. So they're literally a Jews for Jesus type congregation, which denies the divinity of Christ, and practices a whole lot of stuff from the Old Testament, including celebrating, all the Jewish holidays. So that's why that organization is the way it is. And they also were the money behind PragerU. So Prager is also another, for lack of a better term, media front puppet for them as well. And since you mentioned, for example, like Greg Abbott, why is it that Greg Abbott is the way he is? Why is it that you have this diehard pro-Israelness, and as well as he is doing stuff like expanding the Texan State Guard, etc. And the thing is, like, he actually has done a lot on the border in terms of stopping flow. The question is, why is it he takes the position he does? Because the big money behind him, the people he answers to, are 4 billionaires in particular. So 3 of them in Texas. So the two Wilkes brothers that I mentioned before, as well as Tim Dunn, who is a diehard evangelical. And so while there's a lot of good stuff that he's done, in terms of promoting homeschooling, etc. I mean, to be fair, the Wilkes brothers also have pushed a lot of stuff in terms of trying to push Texan politics more rightward. Like Tim Dunn is just absolutely in love with the Zionist state of Israel. And it's something that is, because of his eschatology. So literally, like, all politics is downstream from theology. And you can see that very clearly with the Wilkes brothers. You can see that very clearly with Tim Dunn. And that's why Texan state politics is the way it is. That's why, you look at the most prominent conservative news media organizations. That's why they are the way they are. And like, for example, like I don't know who the money is behind Crowder, but the fact is, to build a media org like that takes a lot of money and a lot of resources, and it is exceedingly difficult. Like, it's essentially prohibitive to try to bootstrap it yourself. So it's so that's the thing. Like, so if Steven Crowder is someone who irritates you, you can just spend probably no more than an hour and you can find out like who was the money guy who launched him. But yeah, so that, and then of course the fourth billionaire behind what's his name, Abbott, would be Jeff Yoss, who lives in Pennsylvania. He's also a huge player in internal Israeli politics, and of course, he's Israeli. So that's why Texas is the way it is.
Does that mean that Ben Shapiro and Steven Crowder don't really believe the based things that they do say? Because they don't. Either you're an extremely good actor or.
I cannot say about Steven Crowder, but Ben Shapiro, I do have some. Thing, so. Yeah. So when it comes to Ben Shapiro, I do have some insight in terms of him. The man sold his soul back in like 2000, somewhere between 2003 2006. The man literally sold his soul. He was a man who would say anything that he was paid to say. Like, he doesn't actually have views of his own, or if he does, he wouldn't say them unless he's paid.
I think I guess he is a good actor. It's hard to know what people actually believe. Like, they can show this persona. Like, like I think the lives of the saints explain a lot. Like outwardness is not the important thing. It's what's inside your actual heart, and like in the end we won't know what they actually believe. But the thing is, what they say is their action. What their actions are doing is important. So that's the important thing that we can talk about. We can't judge what they believe. I think we can just listen to what they say and speak on what their views are. So
yeah, but in short, it's just like, if you want to understand American politics as a whole, because America is a republic, and even a democratic republic. Like, you can read Livy. You go back to early Rome, in its republic. It's ruled by oligarchs. It is ruled by the moneyed class, and the biggest money class, of course, is the banks. But you also have oil. In the case of three of those guys, Dunn and the Wilkes brothers, all made their money in oil. That's where power lies within the American system.
Right. And when I did a stream on the history of democracy, I made a comparison that it was quite clear reading the works of the Greeks that they like venerated wisdom and they elevated them as like superstars. Now, I'm not here to defend democracy, but they had like a pure democracy where it really was, they got into the assembly and made mass votes. But when you look in the American context, I can't help but think that the sort of republic, the Democratic Republic of the United States, substitutes wisdom for capital. And it really does venerate capital in a semi-religious way, and I would say you could tie it to like the Protestant work ethic, that somehow God is blessing you through your hard work and your prosperity, and that we are essentially led at a sort of subtle presuppositional level in American politics by the elite, the wealthy elite.
And that's also, and that's why the American system, the fundamental problem isn't political, it is religious. And even like the right-wing push within the United States, all you have to do is look at the religious beliefs and the religious activities of the individuals who are the big players in what you'd call right-wing American politics. And that's why I don't see a solution. Like, there is no political solution, at this current time, and I don't see one.
That's the genius of the separation of church and state, because when you have a secular religion like Marxism or wokeism or sexual degeneracy is their religion, basically.
I mean, that's a form of religion.
Yeah, and it's kind of this magic trick where that kind of gets to pass through the barrier that other religions don't. And so we do live in a religious society. Yeah, I would say satanic, but it's just that it calls itself secular and atheistic. So then it is allowed by the action of the card that says separation of church and state, and it's a farce. There's no such thing.
Right. I'm curious, Jose. So go ahead, brother. Go ahead, George.
I watched many debates with Andrew Wilson and so on. And every time when he or made by Jim Bob or Jay Dyer or so on is trying to explain to people that actually religion is informing their politics, you need like 30 minutes, 40 minutes just to explain to secular person that what they believe is informing their politics. So I see that other side have a cognitive dissonance to understand that what they believe is informing their politics. They believe that they are separating religion and state, but they are not separating. And I believe that is problem, because right now traditional people are seeing that their religion view is informing their policies.
Right.
But liberal are not, because they are not founded in any religion. They are picking and choosing. They are creating their own religion. So
Right.
they are hoping that they are not doing that because they see in what mess they believe.
Right.
And they are hoping to not transfer that mess in general population. But they are doing that. Like they are doing it. We can see
Right.
that.
I mean, where do the fundamental morals of a society come from? Like, do they come from each's own belief? It can't work like this. Like a society
And I
needs
wanted
to agree upon certain morals for it to work.
No, I totally agree. And I was going to ask Jose, and then Ivan or Glenn or Building with Bones. Building with Bones, are you able to turn your camera on, brother?
Unfortunately, I don't got one.
Okay. I was going to ask Jose, who do you see as the most subversive or pernicious? If we're going to, because you're highlighting accurately the sort of structural problem with American politics in general. But who would you say, in your own personal opinion, is maybe one of the more subversive characters in the conservative movement?
So, like, I'm more so. This is more applicable to Texas, but in terms of like where decisions are getting made and where where things actually happen, like the most subversive, it's never been people on the left. It's always been people on the right. In the case of Texan politics, I would put it at the Wilkes brothers, just because there's at least Tim Dunn recognizes Christ as divine. There's a whole other category when you're essentially acting as Jews for Jesus, except rejecting Jesus as God, when the Jews for Jesus recognize God as being the Son, or Jesus being the Son of God. So that to me, like that is where the chief subversion is, in terms of why you cannot have, or why there isn't a fully functioning right wing in the Texan state politics. So that'll be my statement. I have to go.
Okay.
But,
well, thanks for hopping on, Jose. God bless you and the family, man.
Thank you. Bye.
Yep. So, Glenn, Building with Bones, Ivan, any of you guys want to chime in on today's topic?
Yeah, sure. I would say that the Koch brothers, they're kind of like the most subversive, like media figures in the right wing.
Yep.
But it depends on what level you want to see it. Like if you only care about orthodoxy, I'd say that, for example, I don't know, Father Andrew Damick is kind of one of the most dangerous people. In terms of, like, he has connections to people who are very sound and who are I think honestly trying to do the best for orthodoxy, but they end up muddling the waters. And I was glad someone mentioned Jordan Peterson, because I think he's like the worst right now. And most of his former associates from the intellectual dark web, they all suck. Like, for example, the Weinstein brothers, like Dave Rubin, like how come conservatives now are like gay commentators? That's not conservative at all. Like you're pushing you're pushing the acceptable, like the how do you call it, the acceptable discourse,
Yeah, the Overton window.
The Overton window. So
yeah,
like,
and same with like Blair White, like the trans guy,
Oh,
or
yeah.
I guess trans woman, and posting like thirst traps with his fake tits and stuff, and trying to get like, and then you see him elevated in the conservative world, or doing debates on
Alex Stein,
liberalism. It's like, what?
He did a debate on Alex
What?
Stein's channel where he said that's demonic, that's evil, about child reassignment surgery, and it was supremely hilarious to me, because I'm looking at this,
Man.
we all know what this person looks like. It's sinister, it's nightmare fuel. and telling me that something even worse, that's demonic. But me, I'm there's nothing demonic about me. Yeah, right.
Right.
Well,
My question is, what have conservatives conserved in the last 40 years?
Nothing.
Okay, so are they even conservatives?
No. I mean,
okay, so can we just call them what they are?
What, Trotskyite neocons?
Yeah, like I mean, like okay,
the liberals.
I mean, they're liberals masked as Christians.
Yeah, agreed.
Or
they're
we can just
libertarian.
call them like Rachel Wilson will call them. They're feminist Christians.
Yeah.
Let's just be real. Like the whole evangelical movement, which is the conservative movement or the, conservative political movement, are all a bunch of feminists. So how could they be even called Christians?
I think the Trotskyite word is a very good term to use because it's a relatively accurate, and I also think the liberal term is relatively accurate. And I never really looked into someone like Peter Thiel, but after looking into him just a little bit, he scratched the surface of him and kind of what he's involved in. And, I think it's very interesting to see, him and Musk go way back. And, everybody's saying that Musk is going to be like some sort of political savior. And I think that that's a very strange view of things because, really at the end of the day, kind of what you guys are all saying is like, what we think of as conservatives really seem status quo at the end of the day. And I think that's very strange, and it seems that this weird religious connection with, I would call it theosophy in the tech world, somehow gets to people like Tucker and Musk and these kind of guys. And that's why I'm kind of like lost, like, and even Thiel, who says he's a Christian, but he's gay. And, it's kind of a weird mix of things. And I don't know exactly what to think of it.
I think, again, they use that conservative label, like in the terms of Peter Thiel, like I've done streams talking about his company, Ambrosio, where they, you can purchase blood from, 16 to 18-year-olds to rejuvenate your tissue. It's like they just mark it up as, well, we want lower taxes and smaller government, but then they don't really want a smaller government, but they do want to preserve their wealth. And so it really just comes down to like tax percentages. It's like what conservative
they want smaller
are.
Government in the sense of like, hey, don't tell us that we can't harvest young kids' blood.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, can we stop having government overreach on the shit that we shouldn't have it on?
They want like a lowest common denominator for this whole thing. And one of the things I really like about the Trotskyist, I mean, let's be honest, you have people like Irving Kristol, the grandfather of the neoconservative movement, who were all Trotskyists. They were all communists who were mad at Russia when they changed over. And that's been an issue and a critique by people like Pat Buchanan for the longest time. And it's, they want this lowest common denominator. What does conservative mean? Supporting Israel and what else? Lower
Conservatives
taxes.
lost their conservative position when they let gay marriage happen. All right.
Yeah.
That was the last stand. That really was the last stand. Like that was the last frontier. That was the last standing point. Like this is like, it's either this or death. And they were like, oh, let's just roll over and take it. Well, like we'll take it conservatively, just the tip.
But it's really but it's really the subtle stuff that they say, along with like, they're like, well, the like I saw Eric Prince saying like, well, the Second Amendment is the last line of defense, and they're really using like 100-year-old talking points. We're so far beyond that with the tech and with the digital currency and stuff. I mean, we're basically on a crash course where it's unavoidable that we're going to have some sort of technocracy of some sort. The only thing is, how can we try to like mitigate that problem? And I don't see anyone with any real reputation, like, actively trying to, mitigate that problem. And I think that we can't really trust anyone who's not actively saying, hey, we need to be getting ahead of this.
They don't even think it's a problem. I think
like
they even push it. Like I think some of the conservative circles are pushing this technocratic idea of a state, and I think I don't know if you can mention his name. George Soros is a big advocate for technocracy.
Like when I saw Pearl debating, when I was with Pearl debating Michael Knowles in Tennessee like 2 months ago,
Mm-hmm.
The way that Michael Knowles was responding, I was like, bro, like you are supposed to be like part of the most conservative sect in Catholic in that group of thing, and you are like, I'm sorry, you guys sounded really dumb, bro.
No,
Like,
I agree. Yeah, his whole thing was that he didn't believe in divorce. Like that was his trump card on his conservatism.
So did you hear me ask the question to him off camera?
But he didn't answer some of the points that she made. Again, I'm not here to be a Pearl stan, but it's like he was kind of out of the loop in regards to like what's actually going on.
Well, he like just not answer the question off camera. I'm like off camera. I'm like, bro, you're telling me if your son finds out that his wife cheated on him and pawned this kid off as his, you're gonna be like, the marriage has to stand. It's like, yes. I'm like,
oh my gosh.
I'm
so
like,
you were there. I didn't realize that.
I'm her in the state producer.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
You should have asked him if his wife is gay. Would he say?
Well, then he tried to tell me that Jesus didn't talk about divorce. You know, he's like, that's not Matthew 19. Matthew 19 is not about divorce. He's not. It's never that. He's not permitting divorce. I'm like, it's not permitting divorce. He actually, if you listen to what he says, you know, Matthew or Jesus gives you not even an exception, but he gives you a condition. Right, where it's permittable.
You have to.
Right. And then Paul gives you a condition. Paul gives you another condition when it's permittable.
Right.
There's no other way to interpret that.
And then the theology of the church. Go ahead, guys.
He's not listening to Jesus. He's listening to Pope. Like he's Catholic. Like.
The Pope that likes trannies.
Yeah.
Well, on this note, I just want to mention one more thing because I have to jump off.
The fact, Glenn.
The last thing I'll mention is I appreciate you having me on, and but I want to say, like, I think that us really trying to rediscover, really the right interpretation of Christianity is very important, and I think it can't be overstated because I think a lot of what we're seeing. Somebody said a few minutes ago that the biggest problem we have is really a religious problem, and I think I have to agree. I think that a lot of people are kind of hijacking what Christians believe and trying to use it against us. And I think that that's always been the case. And I see it, it's just a very complex situation. So we should be very vigilant and try to do the best we can to look out for that and help others, look out for that, because I think that that's really what the conservative movement has turned into. And we have to just, be very careful. So thanks, guys. Bye.
Yeah, thanks for hopping on. And just to make a additional point to what he just made, I think that's why the rhetoric around Christian nationalism has ramped up so much, is because we're seeing a sort of bifurcation within the conservative movements of those that place their faith on a higher pedestal than politics. And I don't know if you guys saw the movie Civil War, but I mean, that was a total demonization of white Christian America, and then using the president as like a faux Donald Trump. And the whole theme of that movie is that the journalists are the heroes, uncovering the malicious racism of those supporters, and then eventually are there once the president is killed, and that's like the climax of the movie. It's like the last scene.
Yeah, until like they tried to. Have you seen some of those pictures of like the AI of like Nazi soldiers, and they're like black and stuff?
Yeah.
they're like we're getting rid of all white people, but Nazi soldiers are now black and Asian. I'm like, way to go. Okay, can't blame the white guy.
They asked the AI to draw Julius Caesar, and he's like a Moroccan.
It's
Moroccan.
It's supremely ironic.
It's egalitarianism that blew up, and that's really what we have now. Yeah. And that's what has polluted any type of Christianity, any type of conservatism. You obliterated, gender duties, not roles, but duties. Yep. Because roles sounds like it's more of like this is your role and this is my. No, it's a duty. They have gender duties that God have given, each gender specifically, but with egalitarianism, that's what really annihilated it. And then we wonder why we're in the mess we are in now, because the church has become, or I wouldn't say all churches, but let's say the evangelical churches have formed a spirit of androgyny. So we have the spirit of androgyny in the church, right? And then we have androgyny people outside of the church. We have the T's walking around, and then we have the church having the spirit of it, because women could be pastors, and you know what, you don't need a interpreter for someone speaking in tongues or somebody interpreting a prophecy. Forget that nonsense. That's in the old book. Let's get rid of that, because we don't
And
want
people who
accountability.
make concessions to this kind of degeneracy, they always think their position is correct, and then they criticize what would be even more degenerate. And they kind of have this like screaming stop rather than actually moving in the right direction take, where they're like, oh, well, of course we all understand that it's okay to be gay, but we have to stop the trans hurting the kids. It's like, no. You need to go back all the way to the beginning and not accept any degeneracy. I know.
I think the spirit of prelates is super present, like in the Protestant and Catholic churches. Like it's super present these days. Like it's more obvious. It was more subtle before. I think.
I believe that.
I think the conservative political movement is under this kind of, I don't know, weird attachment to the wrong stuff, and it's
If
Well,
I
part
may
of the
interject,
part
I
of the
want to-
issue.
I wa-
Oh, go ahead.
I want to say something about this. Is like, if you're talking about the conservative movement, like right wing and left wing were a product of the French Revolution. So before that, you only had monarchies, and the very concept of being conservative implies that you have a say in the politics of your country. So you're already starting from a liberal presupposition, from a revolutionary mindset. So in that sense, I would say that all of these things are ultimately tied to the relationship between the Catholic Church and the kingdoms of the West. Now, what happened was that the westernmost countries came to America, and I think that Americans are like the descendants of Cain, and like they tried to evangelize the pagan, like the Aztecs and the Incas, and what happened is like it backfired. Clearly, a couple centuries afterwards, we're seeing how instead of like the American continent becoming Christian, what's happening is that like the westernmost part of Europe is becoming pagan. So what I would say is like the conservative movement was always born with classical liberalism, with modernity, with Enlightenment philosophy. Like before that you had nothing like that. You had like the Protestant like Reformation, which was an attempt to like push back against like all the controversies that the papacy had. So in a sense, like you're never going to find a conservative who defends Christianity, because they don't, by definition, they don't have Christianity to defend, because if they had it, they wouldn't be conservative. They would be monarchists. They would be royalists, in the sense of like, for example, you could have a politician right now pushing for Christian nationalism, but probably he wouldn't be able to say he's a monarchist. So and that's a thing with democracy, which is basically you have to kowtow to the popular demand and to public opinion. But if you found a leader that is not that is more on the fascistic side perhaps, and who is not afraid of pursuing Christian nationalism, now the question would be, who would support that? Would it be the evangelicals? Would it be the Catholics? Because there's not enough people to support that movement, in my mind at least.
Well, part of the problem is that the
nationalism either. I think like now you would have to, the reason, if Christian nationalism worked, why didn't it work when Jesus was here? You know, like why didn't it work after that? Like with Paul,
didn't it work in Byzantium?
You know, for 1400 years at least.
In Serbia, in Bulgaria, and so on.
It won't work.
I think
in
it worked
America
for a
today
long time.
because you got the conservatives that think they're Christians. As soon as you start telling them what Christian nationalism is going to require, like men controlling the three spheres, okay, that means men controlling the home, the church, and the civil right magistrates. That means no
Exactly.
women, no women, no you can't talk. You're supposed to be silent. Okay, go learn to make
The
some friends.
narrative of
You
the
know,
patriarchy is evil has to
Well, no
disappear.
one,
And that's
Yeah.
that's the hardest thing for the modern society
no
is
one.
to put aside the importance of patriarchy.
Well, the conservatives, they have a like a strange relationship with power, right? Like the common idea, the small government. They're like, I should obtain power, and the moment I obtain it, I should give it up. Meanwhile, their opponent, what is their opponent trying to do? Gain more and more power, and they think like they can win by retreating constantly. At least
Not
a lot
only
of the rank
that,
and
Well,
file.
this was a controversy
only-
on X today because conservative commentator Eric Erickson was criticizing Republicans or the youth movement of MAGA because they want to do just that. They want to instill their values through politics, and he was basically saying how treacherous this is, and that makes us like leftists, and this is what we need to shy away from because that will, then we're only conservatives by label. We're not actually conservatives, but it's like, well, the game that you're advocating has led to a total progression towards the opposite. So I don't get the argument he's making.
Well,
And
that's
the
just in,
trouble-
victory is for leftists. That's what they keep saying. Any sort of success politically is for leftists. And if you do anything to win, oh, you're like the left. And it's so goofy and backwards. It's why they can't even defend the women's restroom.
It's
Right.
dialectical thinking. You either love someone, you
Well,
hate them.
Christians
Go
in
ahead.
America are not ready for prosecution. They are not ready for suffering for their faith. They
no, they
literally
don't want
Exactly.
invented a rapture theology where they say, okay, when end time come, like Jesus
Yeah, they get
will
lifted out.
rapture us, we will go out. And so if Christian in America, when they said you cannot pray in school, like before classes and so on, if teachers if all teachers that are Christians said no, we will pray or we will lose our job, like you will stop that before gay marriage and all. But no, they were taught all their life,
The
like
trouble is,
when
Chuck,
there
is that
come persecution, you will get rapture, like, and you don't need to worry about defending your faith.
the
And
trouble with
like,
democratic politics in the West is that we can't afford to have a big tent concept, because if we allow a big tent to trying to be conservative, it backfires because we get people that aren't conservative ruining it. Whereas the left doesn't have that problem, because there might be some leftists more degenerate and far gone than others, but they all accept each other and they tolerate each other because they're all doing the same thing, breaking the world. And so the model, the system of electing someone for 4 years, whatever, it doesn't allow for our side to win.
Well, yeah,
It's
like
just
what
not
is
in the cards.
what did they do whenever we have someone, who suddenly changes face? I mean, Candace Owens kind of did the same thing, but she's apparently come out on the other side for the better. But whenever we get someone who's like center left and for 5 seconds is like, I like small government, I like a little less taxes, we shoot them up to the top. They become the face of the movement, and they need to represent us all. When it's like they've been on the quote unquote right for like 5 minutes.
Right. Logan, you got something to say, brother? Who hopped on?
Yeah, so I kind of wanted to piggyback off of kind of how they all stick together while we can't really afford like a big tent concept like that. Like, because the founding conceit of democracy is kind of to concede things and to form coalitions and cede ground to each other. So it almost dooms like rigid concepts like orthodoxy and
I completely
actual
agree.
Christianity, where you have to suffer and be persecuted from gaining any sort of power, because we have to continually concede things to all these people that call themselves Christians but do not experience the fullness of the faith, or all the degenerates on the left that want to turn your kids into what they're not.
Right.
So it's almost just doomed from the beginning because of the Enlightenment form of government of just you continually concede things to each other until you come to this happy medium that doesn't really exist, as whichever side can persuade more people to become hardliners continually gets more and more power.
Well, every time the dust settles, the concession is further to the left.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely.
And
I think what Logan said can be related to theology of the suffering of Christ, how important the suffering of Christ was, and that we need to try to replicate it as much as we can to be able to live an actual Christian life. So I think this can be related to the misunderstanding of the West on how, like, for example,
I think you're right. I
they
keep
believe that
crossing
the
my
damnation
fingers,
of Christ by
expecting
the
Matt
Father
Walsh.
damned the Son or something.
I keep
So
crossing my
that's
fingers,
a very
expecting.
bad thing.
Absolutely, I keep crossing my fingers, expecting Matt Walsh to chime in, but so far, I don't know. I can't judge his motives, but it looks like maybe
It's
he's
called
afraid
money.
to speak up because he'll lose his money. Exactly. Someone said earlier that we in the West, we don't really know how to suffer persecution, and I think my countrymen in the United States definitely demonstrate that.
Right. And I want to bring Jim in just in a second to get your opinion, but I want to make a point on that because this is something that, again, I've been doing a lot of research on saints in regards to prophecies of the Great World War before the apocalypse. And their point is that suffering is why we're going to have this golden age after the Great World War, because those that can't deal with the suffering, it's going to purify the faith. And it always does. And that's what God has done through history. And that's what the Old Testament teaches us. As every time that they, Israel shied away from the law, well, then bad things came and it forced them to come back to God. And I think that's the same thing that's going to happen here. And I don't think it's any accident that we see these conflicts in places like Ukraine and Russia, Orthodox brothers, Turkey and Greece, Orthodox brothers, Palestine and Israel, Orthodox brothers, and that Orthodoxy really is under a mass persecution right now. So anyways,
Yeah,
Jim,
I think that's going to be I think persecution is the best thing for the church. I think it's what fuels it and brings the actual believers together. Like,
right.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, you're all right. I just want to thank Glenn for hopping on. Glenn Lawrence, thanks, brother, for hopping on. And Jim, welcome.
Hi, thank you.
What are your thoughts on today's topic?
Well, thank you. It's 8:30 here in Sydney, Australia. So I've been listening to you, appreciating.
8:30 in the morning, right?
Correct. Yes, that's right. I am. I'm in my home office. I'm an Aussie lawyer, I suppose. But anyway, I'm a traditional Catholic. When I say traditional, I mean pre-Vatican II, 1965. I'm father of 4 children. In terms of what you just talking about, I think one aspect to understand Christianity as a whole is you've got to understand enlightenment and the rebellious nature of Freemasonry, and it's not conspiratorial theory, the Antichrist, which has been emanating, and it's been mostly expressed in 1789, so-called French Revolution.
Agreed.
That's the abolition of the old order.
Right.
The hierarchy, the church has been part and parcel of,
it was finished
of
after
every.
World War I.
It was 1054, the first schism, the first split, East and West Roman Orthodoxy and Catholicism, then the Protestant Reformation. But if I can go right back to the modern time, and particularly Marxism, which I think is so destructive, and unfortunately, America is a Marxist society.
Agreed.
Which Russia was once.
Right. Well, the Orthodox saints, part of their prophecy is that the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1992 was that those demons were going to infiltrate the rest of the world, and they highlighted that America was going to be the primary target.
Exactly. And what I just want to emphasize, I don't know if you heard of Antonio Gramsci.
I have, yeah, absolutely.
Right.
The Italian
the
Marxist.
Italian philosopher,
Yep.
Marxist philosopher. Basically, what he did, and this is the repercussions. He saw classical Marxism, which is all about class, bourgeoisie, etc., interpretation, materialist interpretation of society, and he stole that from Hegel, of course.
Right.
But anyway, that's another story for another day. But I think the most dangerous person is Antonio Gramsci, and I'll tell you why I think that. I think because he saw that you cannot go from the peasantry. You've got to change the culture, and that's what we determine cultural. What does that actually mean? You've got to, the Overton window has to be shifted.
Yep.
And I'll give you as a lawyer. I'm not an American lawyer. I don't know, thank the Lord, but I'll give you a sort of I'm not trying to teach you how to suck eggs. Your 14th Amendment and how your society, American society, has adapted consciously or subconsciously. And I just got a few notes here. I think it all started in 1965 with the Kennedys opening up the borders. In other words, that's the first thing. But the important is Griswold against Kentucky. That's 1965 we're talking about. That's where contraception was allowed, particularly the 30 red states. So the imposition of the federal sphere. So since the Civil War, America's got 50 states. They were very independent. So that's the first thing: attack on culture, contraception. Then what you have in 1969 in a case called Stanley against Georgia, where again pornography was allowed. Then in 1973, the abortion, the banning of abortion, no state, abortion was allowed. So these are the very important. I'm generalizing. 2003 in Lawrence against Texas, the banning of sodomy. So you could not let sodomy was sort of permeated, got in there. Then finally is 2015, I suppose, the Oberfeld, the very famous case Oberfeld regarding gay marriage. So you can see all of these things are cultural. I'll just regurgitate: contraception allowed, pornography allowed, abortion allowed, sodomy allowed, gay marriage recognition. And I do a lot of family law here in Australia, and it's a tragedy. I mean, what I see. But anyway, that's another story. I talk too much. I apologize for the rant, but that's my two points. So you've got to understand the politics and the repercussions. Most important, the Christianity was turfed out of the public square.
Agreed.
Slowly, it's public square.
I was going to make a comment that you made
Go
that
ahead.
I think is partly what we're also seeing with the younger generation and the threat of why TikTok needs to be banned is that those that are promoting a traditional Christian message, the fervor of the younger people is the embodying of those values, which is how we create a culture. And so, and we've seen that for the last few generations in America, people have been nominally Christian, but they haven't embodied those virtues to really cause a Christian cultural shift. And I think that is a real threat to the powers that be, as they're seeing that the nihilism in the West, the absence of religion and traditional values, the relativism of truth, the absolute chaos everywhere is forcing young men to then try to find refuge and some type of rock to stand on, which ultimately is Christianity, which ultimately, obviously I believe it orthodoxy, but whatever perspective or persuasion you're coming from, it is Christianity, and it is the embodying of those values and standing up for that. That's how we have Christian families and Christian children, and they grew up to be Christians, and we begin to take over culture. And so I think that is really whatever the topic today is, who's the worst in the conservative movement, the way that we respond to it is, as I said before, is having our theology inform our politics and live in it.
DPH, I wanted to say
None are
something
good.
before. Let me go
That's
now first, because this was from what was being said
Yeah, go
before.
ahead.
Jim
Sure.
said something like we were talking about the Old Testament and what the Old Testament it teaches us as Christians. Like you also have Moses coming down from the mountain and seeing the people like with their idols, and he tells people, those who are with me, come with me, let's kill the rest. So and then Moses killed most of the idolaters. So I think there is no, people like to make this argument that the God of the Old Testament is not the same as the God of the New Testament, but he
Marcionism.
definitely is. Of course, like with Christ, the revelation is fulfilled, and we have more of God's, let's say, revelation available to us. But I do think that part of the story is very important in the sense that you have to be able to conceptualize stuff and separate stuff as like even cognitive processes that allow you to distinguish what's inside from what's outside, what is food from what is refuse. And it also happens to appear in the Bible when the Israelites destroy the giant clans. So, and basically what's happening there is not that there's genocide in the sense that they're slaughtering everyone, but rather that they're subjugating them culturally, so that these giant clans, which would be heretical nations, would be crushed politically through their own, let's say, through the Israel's faith. So basically, they killed a lot of people, and those who remained eventually converted back to Israel. That's how you get like Levite priests who are African instead of being like white like the rest of the Jews. So it's not an ethnic thing when you think about nations. Nations have to do with belief, and the fact that we are in a sense trying to performatively justify like a common sense Christianity, I think is what led us to this place. And I don't mean to be like the uber ultra like rigorous Orthodox, but I don't think any of the other like this in terms of theology. It doesn't mean that politically you cannot make like, let's say, any, that you cannot make coalitions. But I think that an Orthodox politician would speak about Christianity in general terms, but would never say something like from any kind of persuasion. Like that would be something that he would keep to himself, and he would let like their Protestant their Protestant fans think the best of him, think like he's on their side, and simply wield power to change the culture. Jim mentioned Gramsci. Well, we also have a Gramsci in the right, who's called Alain de Benoist, who basically tried to do the same, but with a perennialistic bent. And like right now, I'm working for a right-wing journal which is very influenced by him, and I see all the pitfalls of that.
I know Alain de Benoist. I know Alain in France, Paris. I know Professor Tom Sunic very well. So
yes.
I'm very his book on well, he's a new French writing in 1968, uprising in Paris. Yeah, he's old.
And I think that the issue with that political group is that they're first of all, they're very focused on ethnicity. And I don't mean this in a sort of, oh, they're racist. I don't care about that. What I mean is they think that the nation is intimately tied with ethnicity, and they spout this nonsense that is very cultural relativism to me, which is basically every nation has a right to exist. No, I'm sorry. Like if you're sacrificing people to your gods, I will destroy you. I don't care. And I think we need politicians that have that kind of spirit that is willing to get their hands dirty for God.
Well, let me make a point, Ivan, because I think what's going to happen is God's going to take care of that. So I think this great World War III that's getting ready to occur, we're already seeing it. It's already begun. I mean, so I think that's exactly what's going to happen. It's going to totally, I mean, according to the saints, America is going to, you know, I don't want to say it's going to be in a drastically different place. I mean, they speculate a large swath of the population is going to be gone, and those that persevere after this next like 30 years is going to be mostly Christian people. That America will be mostly a truly Christian nation of faithful believers. But but it's like, what do? You can't ask the politicians to go to war against certain nations, and that's where I think God's going to take care of it, and through providence. I think Western nations are going to unfortunately see their own demise. And so whether it be the collapse of the dollar or the Western economic system, the central banking system, I mean, all these things are under attack right now. And so in my personal opinion, I think God's already getting ready to deal with it. And that's where the suffering and embracing suffering as a Christian is that our glory is going to be in a generation or two, and it's going to be our children and our grandchildren. And it's about persevering and giving them the right values so that when they look at the chaos of the world, they can see it for what it is.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add, because I gotta go in just a minute, but
the Greek way of saying what you were saying is like Constantinople is coming back to us.
Well, according to the saints, it's going to. You know, Russia is going to annihilate Turkey, and then there's going to be a great war over Constantinople. Somehow the Americans are going to get it, and they're going to give it back to the Greeks, according to the saints.
But
before he says, sorry,
building with bones needs to say he's ready to leave. Go ahead.
Ivan's phrase could be like reduced in one phrase. It's like love your enemy, but you shouldn't love God's enemy. So that's.
Yeah, and one of the things, because a lot of mentioning of culture is going on, and I had the pleasure to go to that Southern Orthodox convention last year, the inaugural one, and that's kind of a big topic there. You know, this you know, we need to make a Christian culture, we need to make our culture more Christian, and it's one of those topics that I think a lot of people on the right and in the religious sphere really struggle with. We had a British priest who was a trained anthropologist who visited, and his offering for the topic was culture is what we do. And I think kind of one of the things that we can add to build that sort of culture, because it's kind of what we're all interested in really, is focusing on doing, focusing on going to church and stuff like that. And that's kind of the only way we're going to persevere through something like this upcoming world war, this upcoming excitement. But I got to hop off. Thank you for having me on, David. Love your work.
Yeah, well, thanks for hopping on. Appreciate the insight. God bless you, brother.
You too, man. Take care.
So, DPH, I want to add a caveat to what I was saying.
Yeah, go ahead.
It sounded, I was being a little hyperbolic because
you went straight from Moses to Western politics needing to get their hands dirty.
He was preaching.
Well, my point is that you have to actually wield power, and I think that we've had a few of those types of characters. Like, for example, although I don't like DeSantis that much, I think he did have a few moments where he was willing to use power to enforce like certain cultural norms. I think that it's outside his wheelhouse in the sense that he won't know how to wield power, but that willingness to wield power is the kind of thing that I think is missing in the right, because the right is always trying to find agreement with the other person. But for example, I'll give you a very small example. I made a joke on Instagram, and I started receiving a lot of death threats. And like I'm not gonna be faced by death threats on the internet, but these people are demonized. If you think that you can like have a rational discussion, like you're already falling into the liberal trap that is expecting there to be like a solution that is peaceful. If you believe in authority, then like the ruler will always have to enforce it with force. So in that sense, I'd say you have to beat them back on every front, every cultural front, and you can even do it on individual states. And I think the fact that Trump existed means that that kind of approach is out of the window, because obviously DeSantis made a lot of mistakes in his in his bid for the presidency this time around. But the fact that Trump exists means that you're not going to get exactly that, which is what you need, because Trump is not the defender of like. I think that Trump is the main opponent of conservatives, in the sense that he's like the anti-conservative. Instead of a conservative, you get a guy who's defending like a gay marriage. You get a guy who was all in favor of the stabbies. You get a guy who basically is a liberal from 20 years ago, and in that sense, like I even admire the guy for many of his attributes. I think he's funny. I think he's got a lot of virtues, but he's a degenerate. So like those two things don't go together. And the fact that the more conservative leaning type people have allowed that guy simply because he had the right insight of how to do politics in terms of like populist rhetoric means that now you're not gonna get the chance to have another candidate who could be way stronger. Like I think DeSantis made some real mistakes, but he was like a Trump 2.0. He was like a better version of Trump.
But for like 2 minutes though.
Could I?
Then
so
they
just
got the grasp on him.
I'm just saying, we can't just like wield power all willy nilly. That's what they do. We're the good guys. We don't want to be like them.
Could I?
Logan.
Just go ahead. Do you want to? I just want to make a comment on what Ivan just said. I don't believe in sort of left and right, Republicans, Democrats, Labor Party, Liberal Party. I think this is all. Again, I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think there's enough evidence out there that it's a bone given to the great masses, the lumpen proletariat, I call it, the great unwashed. That's why I never vote. I mean, in Australia, voting is compulsory, and I always write snidey jokes on my ballot paper to get my name ticked off. But getting back, it's the elite, the political. So now we are dominated. It's not what is a political elite in the World Forum they have in Davos and all that. It's economics. It's the banksters. I call them not bankers, but Wall Street banksters. There's media, Hollywood. I mean, ABC, NBC. They're really pissed off because of the social media. Of YouTube and various other platforms. They're losing control of the narrative. In Australia, you probably heard we got this stupid senator, Lambie. Now, I'll give you a short, I mean, this is a bit of a laugh. I'm sorry to be so derogatory, but she's a Tasmanian slut. Caligula made his white horse a senator, and Australians have voted in a uneducated slut from Tasmania to be a senator. My question is, what is the difference? We're entering into a realm of absurdity. And unfortunately, Australia, like America, we're just following the big brother, which is yourself. In terms of, I'm talking about in terms of politics. In terms of religion, or as I said, I'm a traditional Catholic. I'm so peed off with my Pope. I mean, he's a typical former Italian liberation theologian from Argentina, crying out loud. They're Marxists. I mean, they love communism, and unfortunately, everybody can be critical and fight. That's the easiest thing to do. But I think that the church is founded on hierarchy and on shepherds. And we as sheep have to be led. Now, I can speak for my church, the Roman Catholic Church. It has not got leaders with balls. And I'll start at the top and go all the way down to cardinals, bishops. Not all of them, but many of them.
Right.
They're shutting up. And silence is you're consenting. They turn the other head. Nothing to see here on all sorts of issues, which the church will say, stop. Okay? Again, I can't go, but everybody heard of Friedrich Nietzsche, the nihilist philosopher, German philosopher. One of the famous things he takes from him is he said, God is dead, but you cannot kill God, he said. Man has to have beliefs, and we substituted belief in the transcendental,
right,
the feeling, the spirituality, with various other beliefs. Example, COVID-19. You have to believe it. If you didn't wear a mask, God, you are you're going to kill half the population. Climate change. Everything is changing, but you've got to believe in it.
Right.
110%. It's a religion.
It is. Yeah, I did whole streams talking about the revival of paganism.
People, these young, uni students in America and Australia and all that, they're fervent believers, not in God, not in traditional religion, but they believe in man. They substituted God with man. That's the problem.
Yeah, of course, we all agree. We all agree, Jim. But the issue is that, like you said, that using force was easy, fighting was easy. If it's so easy, why don't we do it? Like, and I don't mean like be a bloodthirsty maniac. I mean, like, those people you're mentioning are idiot soy boys. Like, they can't think, they cannot fight, they're not willing to die for what they believe. So why should I move a single inch when you're offending my God, when you're trying to destroy me? Like, if you have a choice of avoiding being killed, you should take it. Like, martyrdom is not this romantic idea that you should offer yourself up on a silver platter for the other person to destroy you. Like, if you can run, and if you can fight. And I take your point on like lack of leadership in terms of like spiritual leadership, but I don't think it's the role of priests to tell us to fight. Actually, I would say it's the role of priests to tell us to pray. Now, and
no. When I say fight, you probably misunderstood. I didn't mean physically fight or cause a revolution, but you can have a quiet revolution. For example, in 2 or 3 years ago, a lot of the churches were closed, yet you had brothels open.
I don't think revolution is an answer.
Now, I'm not talking about revolution, but a disobedience is sit down or do something. That's a very powerful, silence is so powerful weapon.
I'm sorry, but I have to disagree there.
I don't think a revolution is the answer, because I think, especially in the Orthodox Church, our views are clear, and they're super clear. So if someone in the hierarchy is messing up, it's obvious. Like, it's super clear. We don't need to do a revolution or like find out what's wrong. That's not the way it is. And what Ivan said made me think about the two-headed eagle of the Byzantine Empire, and it's two-headed. It's not one head. It's two-headed in one body. It doesn't work. Like the right head, which is the church, cannot do what the left head does. Like, we need, for example, not for example, it's the main example we use is the Byzantine Empire, and I think now the closest thing to it is Russia, and so that's it. So
let me just catch up on super chats real quick, and we can get it. We can continue this combo. Alt Monarchist throws in $10, says, let's not forget that the Anglo-American billionaires have sponsored the Bolshevik Revolution to destroy Russia. True. Again, Dyer's done great work in covering the works of the elites, discussing that. The degeneracy we see in America today is spiritual payback. Agreed. And then Back in My Right Mind 88 throws in $10. He says, this is from this Orthodox boomer Grammy. You young men are responsible for helping me think and not just swallow what's being dished up. A Herculean effort for a 73-year-old woman. I love Church of the Eternal Logos. Well, thank you so much. Back in My Right Mind 88. Really appreciate that. And we love to have our Orthodox Grammys here. So really appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. And over on the dono chat, we had $5 come in from Andrew, who was on here earlier. He said, nothing to read. Just wanted to say thank you for the time and what you're doing. Well, thank you very much, Andrew. Really appreciate it. And Timothy throws in $20 over on the dono chat. No comment. Thank you very much, Timothy. Really appreciate that. And then Amateum became a COTEL Crew member and said, everyone should see the Swiss policy research study, American Media Empire. It's wild. Yes, I am familiar with that, and it is wild. And it shows you how everything's orchestrated and manipulated. But thank you very much, Amateum, for becoming a COTEL Crew member. And I think that is now we are up to speed on all the super chats. So if you guys want to support, feel free to send in any questions or comments on Dono Chat, Streamlabs, or the YouTube. And if we had any nubs out there, feel free to give some memberships to our live chat. Okay, so we were talking a little bit about revolution, and where do you guys want to take this? This can be our last little segment here, but it sounds like there's a little bit of a contention between you guys. Where do you want to go between? It sounds like Jim and Ivan maybe we're seeing things a little bit different.
Well, it seemed like, to me, I could be wrong, but it felt like Ivan and Nadim were mishearing Jim. I could be wrong about that, but from what I was hearing, Jim was just saying we should be working on ourselves and not falling in line with all the degeneracy and try to be living upstanding citizens in our own ways, in our own quiet ways. And I think he misused the word force, and
I think our problem was with the way he associated the hierarchy with how the hierarchy of the church with how the state should work or something, because we don't believe in church and state separate, but we believe in that what I gave the example of the two-headed eagle. So it's super
the Symphonia
specific.
of Byzantium, of the double-headed eagle, right?
Well, exactly. So I don't know the full meaning of this, but
Well, let Jim respond to it. I think he understands what we're saying. Go ahead, Jim.
Well, revolution has many different levels. I mean, there's the ultimate. When diplomacy fails, you have war. You have a revolution, uprising. Prior to, I'm talking about the Middle Ages, which were very, very stable. Everybody calls them the Dark Ages. In fact, they were not dark at all.
No, they weren't.
Total stability. But anyway, I won't go there. The relationship between the church and your king or lord was very, very much, like you mentioned, two eagles, the church and the state, the secular and the religious.
So it's not two eagles. It's the same one.
It's one eagle with two heads. Yes, I understand. The Russian flags and
Byzantine,
Nicholas and all that. Yes, I fully understand. And that is the problem which has permeated with the Enlightenment.
Yes,
it's kicking out the religious, the church, whatever you want to call it, because it was one body, two heads. And but to be a Christian is very difficult. You're telling a prospective person, anyone who wants to convert, you got to take up your cross. And it's
always been this way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
That the first day.
So, exactly. But the historical progression, if you see Europe, especially the landmark points are the French Revolution. And what happened there is the beheading of the king and the queen, and the banning and burning of churches. And the various elements of people who have dominated. Napoleon followed suit, made himself an emperor, but the church was banished away. In Russia, with the 1917 revolution, the communist revolution under Lenin and Trotsky and company, same thing. The churches were, banished, destroyed, subdued. Now they're open, more open, but the West, the so-called decadent West, where we live, I include Canada, America, Australia, New Zealand, and Western Europe, is awful. I mean, churches are empty, and speaking from the Roman Church, we are not led, and we need leaders, not dictators, but leaders who. The church was not of this world. G.K. Chesterton put it well. The church is to guide, not to lecture or dictate or be an absolute dictator. And when there's a moral,
You're the one who's conflating state and church, man. Like you're the one who's asking the church to become like a political power, and that's exactly what happened with the Catholic.
No. But the church was part of political power. He had incredible clout.
Yeah, in the West,
in the West, he had incredible power.
The Eastern Orthodox.
I'll give you an example. You just think about it. Any peasant rebellion in Western Europe. If you were taxed, what were you taxed? They took your cows or your sheep or your grain or whatever. And so when the peasants got up, they went to the local lord and they burned his castle down. You know where all the taxes went to. Let's forward back to now.
But
someone closes your bank account. A bank account.
I'm sorry, but it's not a universal Christian belief. It's that the church should punish someone legally. That's not our.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not.
Hold on. I think there is a misunderstanding. What Jim is saying, I think we could totally see from an Orthodox front. I mean, even during Byzantium, the church did have sort of jurisdictional power and could, again, prosecute. There was a legal system, but if they like blasphemy laws or certain things that occurred, it was tied to the state. And I think what Jim, again, he's coming from a Western Catholic perspective.
Apparently, what I just said, in the last 24 hours, Joe Biden, or the last 48 hours, attended a pro-abortion, and he crossed himself.
Upside down,
and he's supposed to be a so-called Catholic. He's not a Catholic. Now, what I asked from my church, the local cardinal or bishop from Delaware, wherever he's from, should ban him from going to mass. He's pretending to be a Catholic, pretending to be a Catholic. You know what I'm saying?
We agree.
And this is the. And so I see I'm not speaking for any other church. I'm being, I think, constructively critical.
I agree. And that's what's happened in Greece recently. So Greece just passed a basically pro-homosexual bill, and the bishops and Mount Athos particularly has issued a statement where they will not commune any of the state politicians who voted for this. And so they are basically ostracized from the Orthodox Church in Greece. And that's, I think, what Jim is trying to get at, is that the church doesn't need to be politically involved at the same side as the state, but it needs to reinforce its principles in regards to who's
Christian
actually
principles.
So the
Christian principles as to pornography, as to sodomy, as to gay marriage. These are all legal state thing run, abortion, etc. The church has always had a say in that.
I think your intentions are super good. That's not the thing, but
thank you.
I'm trying to explain to you. Like, a bishop cannot be the head of a state. That's
no, but he's not.
I don't know if he's saying that. I don't know if he's saying that.
Asking for that. That's not the point he's making. That's not the point he's making.
Okay, another point is that legally it can't be something written in law against something. It can be like something public that the church does, or like an anathema or an excommunication from the church, but not from the state.
But it informs the state. So if we get back to the Byzantine double-headed eagle, it's the church that informs the political policies and laws of the state. The state enforces them, but it's the church that tells them where the lines are.
Okay. So that's the misunderstanding we had between me and Jim. So
I think we would all agree there's
differences. The same thing.
Yeah, I think we'd all agree that there's differences between the Byzantine Empire and the various kingdoms in the medieval era with under the papacy. I think we'd agree that there's political and church differences there, but I don't think that was what was the misunderstanding that was just happening.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I think that was exactly the misunderstanding.
Okay.
So.
I think it was
Ananon has the church should inform the state, and the state should protect the church. I think all of us are trying to make that point in roundabout ways.
Okay. because we saw it as like a Orthodox Catholic.
Yeah. I think he was saying something
I think me and
we'd probably
Ivan
all
were-
agree with, but you were looking at
Yeah.
it as the differences, which I think Jim himself would agree. I don't know if he's looked at Byzantium and he's looked at all that, but I think he would agree that there's differences.
Yeah, and I think we're all making the same point, and I absolutely agree. And I imagine if some of these prophecies of the saints are accurate, which I suspect they are. I mean, me as a believer, I do believe that they're going to come true. That this is what we're going to see moving forward, is that the church will become more prominent, and the states that survive that are Orthodox are going to be more protected by it, because the evil is going to become more obvious in the next 30 years, and the spiritual reality of everything that we're facing.
I have a point regarding all of that in terms of eschatology, because we've been prophesied as well that the Antichrist would come when the Roman Empire would fall. So, like the idea, and this is in scripture as well, the idea is that the state itself was the bulwark that was protecting people from the coming of the Antichrist. So now that was the point I was trying to make when Jim said something about like a silent revolution or like a public disobeying. Like, okay, it's fine. I have nothing against like being disobedient. I'm taking the responsibility to fight.
Ivan, it's a little bit hard to hear you.
can
Maybe hold the microphone closer.
Okay.
Oh yeah, that's a lot better.
Yeah.
So basically, like, I have no issue with the idea that like we would have to be a civil, that we should use civil disobedience, but I think it's not about that. We don't need like a priest telling us to be disobedient. What we need to do is like look at the places in our own life where we have to like be civilly disobedient, and also not be afraid of entering into politics, because if not, then you become a Gnostic, where you're expecting yourself to be a monastic and to like only live your spirituality privately but not publicly. And God himself tells you not to deny him. So like you have to pay personal prices for that. I know I have, because like I've missed job opportunities because of things I've written before, or because I was a Christian, and all of that. But like I don't think there's this stark separation between laity and the secular and the political life, but rather I think they're the same domain. And to ask the priests to, or the monks to step into that realm to fight for us, I think is an act of cowardice, and it's an inversion of what those two powers represent.
Right. Well, I don't think no, I don't think anybody was, but just to respond to your point, I agree with you that that's not the role of monastics or clergy. But in regards to civil disobedience, I think just by embodying our values and teachings of the church, we will be civilly disobedient, because we're not going to compromise on those values. So I see what's happening as less, and I've said this before, and some people that are more antagonistic didn't like it, but I see it as more as a lack of aggression and more of a sort of defense, that we don't take one step back from the perimeter of the church and the teachings of the church fathers. And I think that's how we persevere through space and time of what's getting ready to occur in the chaos and the catastrophe. And so I think that just by living our faith, we will be seen as enemies of the state. And I think that is part of the Antichrist spirit that's already emerging. And we already know for a fact that Christianity is the most persecuted religion in the world. And it's been like that for a while. So, and now we're seeing these wars kick off, and unfortunately, Christians, and especially Orthodox Christians, are the ones that are being hurt the most. I mean, just like the war in Iraq, it annihilated massive swaths of the Orthodox Christian faith that was still present in Iraq.
And Catholic
I
too.
think in contrast to what you said, as Orthodox Christians, we can't like defy the state as in like stop following the laws or something, because that's like straight anarchy. And also like
yes, you can.
like
If the
like
the laws are
Paul,
unjust,
Paul, it's a bit of a, it's like, it depends if it makes you cross the line. Yeah, of course you shouldn't follow this law, but I think Paul, the Saint Paul says it that he calls Caesar like a diakonosis or something. Is a it's like another word for the tyrant or something, or
well, even like the
leader,
Byzantine
leader of
emperor would be able to go into the Holy of Holies
exactly,
as like a deacon.
And Caesar would be one of the biggest persecutors for Christianity. So but you still have to regard him as your leader, even if he's not Christian. So I think you should find your best Caesar. Of course, you should try to find your best Caesar, and even try to change the public perception of how a Caesar should be. But still, you have to regard this leader as whatever Saint Paul says. So
yeah, and to piggyback on that, Nadim, that I think was beautifully said. I think like what the main thrust of what I'm trying to convey is that you have to be transgressive in a Christian sense. Like, and if you take like the idea, because if you have Christian values, you're going to be transgressive to the world. Like the world and Christianity do not mix, the spirit of the world, I mean. And if you look, for example, at the story of King David, like Saul had been a corrupt king who was anointed by God, but took for himself the powers of the priestly caste. So then the blessing came to David, and David, he didn't overtly go against Saul. In fact, he did all he could in order to protect Israel and to not undermine Saul. Saul eventually died by his own hand, like he asked, like he went to a stupid war. And this has a lot of different readings. One of it is spiritual, and I think it's they're all true at every level. But like the main thrust of what I think Nadim and I am saying is that you have to push back without losing yourself. And this means that you have to occupy spaces that are secular, and like Christendom. Like you're supposed to be in that fight, and that means not being afraid of wielding power just because you're a Christian and you're governing a place that is like inhabited by non-Christians. Like on the contrary, if you truly believe that Christianity is the way to live, then you're not becoming a tyrant by imposing order. On the contrary.
Exactly.
Well, if I can say, well, you're right. In principle, what you just said is right. But I think in practice, it is absolutely impossible. I think Christianity has lost its battle. And it has now, let me finish. You see, I'm just carefully listening. One of the things being a lawyer is I try to analyze words, and words have many meanings. Okay, so it's easy to be misunderstood or whatever. We've internalized Christianity. We said if you want to be a good Christian, we've come to the stage where be good with the family, and that's given. Christians 300 years ago have been part of the public square, which has been gradually eaten away, gradually. And today, I would say, go and get a job and publicly profess, or not just say, look, I'm an Orthodox or I'm a Christian. I don't think it will. You're trying to get a job in Wall Street and say I'm an active Christian. Good luck. Or Hollywood. Come on. Let's call it,
I think
would you get, you know what I'm saying, what I'm getting at?
You're,
what I'm
you're
getting at.
completely correct. You're completely correct. But I would never say that Christianity has lost. I think it's the only thing that hasn't lost. I think it's like the church is the only thing that still has persevered till now. So I don't
Well,
think
it will persevere. I absolutely agree. But
I think he means
do you
lost
agree
in a
with-
cultural sense.
Yeah.
Oh
We're
yeah,
talking
right.
about
Okay, so then
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the kind of misunderstanding that can happen there.
Yeah,
So-
well,
so-
why?
But
I mean,
What?
Why did Christianity disappear from the
No,
cultural
it will
sphere?
never
Because
disappear.
Christians stopped regulating culture. Because like let's take what happened with Australia and X. We can all
Oh,
agree
yeah.
that this move was horrifically done. The idea that this let's say functionary for the state is able to tell an international company how to operate overseas seems like a wild overstep, especially taking
Exactly,
into
yeah.
account the fact that the owner of said company produces missiles on his free time. It sounds a little bit bizarre, but the reality is that states are realizing that if they don't take culture into their own hands, they will not be sovereign anymore. And like we're speaking in English, we're having this conversation. Most of you are from the Anglosphere. I speak English because there was a cultural hegemony that was built on Hollywood that you were just in a sense criticizing. And Hollywood used to have a lot of laws that ban certain kinds of content. Now, under the ideology of, let's say, free speech and all of that comes from Enlightenment ideals, like basically what you said is the state cannot legislate morality or culture, which is exactly what it is designed to do. So basically, the classical liberal presuppositions will always lead you into a direction where parents don't have any authority in their home, and the state will mandate degeneracy. So what I'm saying is basically the West has to change the way it views these things. And if the right wing still defends these Enlightenment ideals, the left wing will eventually impose their culture through the state. And this idea that the state can be neutral, or that school teaches you how to think, not what to think, that's all nonsense. Like if school teaches you anything, like indoctrination and education are the same word, they mean the same thing. So we cannot be reactionaries saying, oh no, they're teaching people how to think and they're teaching them Marxism. It's like schools will teach them how to think regardless of what you think you can prevent them teaching. Like they will teach some kind of ideology or some kind of values. Now you can make them Christian consciously, and you can take charge of doing that, or you can keep playing hot potato and throw it to the market or to the people to regulate themselves. But even in our own spiritual life, we don't let our passions rule us. We use our minds. First we have to purify our minds, and then we let our minds enter into our heart so that our heart is changed. So we don't let our appetites rule us. We let our highest aspects rule us. So in that sense, I think like secular authorities are meant to convey that in laws that are not inherently tyrannical, in the sense that the way we think tyranny is. Because the word, like we use the word tyranny in Orthodox liturgy. We say
Despota.
yeah, exactly. Like, and we're blessing our bishop that way. We bless our bishop, telling him like long life to our tyrant. And the idea is that we've learned that tyrant means someone who will rule you in a way that that is against your own I don't know, welfare. And the true idea is the complete opposite. The idea that tyranny is inherently bad is satanic. I think it's the form of Satanism that prevents one to have any kind of authority over one
Well, I
Because
think what you're
when-
getting at is the problem with utopian thinking, and that utopianism really is a satanic ideology this side of eternity. And this is something I've highlighted, tracing utopian thinking into transhumanism, because I believe there's a direct intellectual historical lineage there coming out of.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, but when you're speaking on, the people that rule us in these secular nation states, that I still believe, as an Orthodox Christian, I'm sure maybe you guys do as well, that God blesses Joe Biden, to be the president. Like, we deserve the humiliation.
That's what
of
I
a
was
man.
trying to
Yeah,
say.
we deserve the
That's what I was
humiliation of a
thinking.
man who is absolutely corrupt, does the exact opposite that everything that his supposed Catholic faith is supposed to teach, and the money out of China and the Burisma money coming out of Ukraine with Hunter,
All that, yeah.
like America and all nations, whether it be Macron or whoever it is, Schultz in Germany, we're given these leaders by God based on the way that the nations of peoples are living their lives. And so, the only thing that changes that is a purification, a purging through suffering. And that's where, I hate to sound like a broken record, but the saints talk about how sometimes war is necessary, and war is an offering of repentance, because after that, there's always a time of peace, and that we still have one major window of repentance for the world after this world war. So, yeah, so I think we're in the situations that we all deserve as nations, maybe not individually as people, but as nations, we deserve the leaders that we have. And that's why they're so weak, and they're narcissistic, and they're all about themselves. And in a way, that's our nations are filled with those people.
I think that gives us hope.
I absolutely. I think it's a reason to be optimistic if you hold on to the faith. And that's where, getting back to what Jim and you were saying, that maybe we've lost culturally, but we do win in the end, because Christ has already won. He's won in eternity. So anyways, guys, final comments before we hop off here. Anybody want to say anything or share something before we close down the panel?
I will die on the hill.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, God bless.
It was a very nice conversation, and I hope I'll join another time. I always watch those panels. So
great. Are you in Lebanon right now?
Yeah, I live in London.
Oh, okay.
My son is in London. He's a doctor in London. My three sons. No, my son.
Ah, okay. Yeah, and I'm going back in a bit, but now I'm in Lebanon. So glory to God.
Glory to God, brother. And Willie Jenkins threw in $5. He said, "West Side is the best side, gang." Well, thanks, Willie Jenkins, for that.
Where's Ivan? Ivan, where are you from? Which country?
I'm from Argentina, and I live in Spain.
Argentina.
Sí.
Are you in Spain? Whereabouts in Spain? Barcelona or Madrid?
Madrid.
Madrid. All right. And the two other ones are what? From America, of course.
Yeah, I'm from Tennessee, but I live in Seattle.
Yeah, I'm in Indiana.
Washington State.
I'm not sure what state Logan's in. I know that he's in the U.S.
Illinois.
I live in Illinois.
Oh, Illinois. Oh, okay. You're right next to me.
Yes, sir.
What city in Illinois?
Sorry,
I don't mean if you don't want to say that publicly. I apologize.
No,
What's
you're
your address?
good. I live in Bethalto. It's about 30 minutes out from St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, okay. You're south in Illinois. All right.
I'm from Sydney.
I picked up on the accent, Jim.
David, you mentioned the Father Turbo calls. I think he's a very good person. He visited our parish in London, I wasn't there, unfortunately, but I heard he's a very
great man.
I saw they filmed it, so it was. So
yeah, I have the privilege.
I don't know if you know him personally, but
I do know him personally.
From what I heard from the parish, he's a very good.
He is. He's a good guy, and I'm thankful that he's a friend. Really big fan of Father Turbo. So,
Ivan, I saw his podcast. I'm seeing the video of when he talked in our parish.
Oh, okay. Mr. Westford, you were getting ready to say something.
Mhm.
Go ahead. You had a final comment or
Yep.
something. Yeah,
Mhm.
go ahead.
There's not a lot of hills I will die on, but I will die on the hill that Benny Johnson is the worst conservative. Oh my gosh, I cannot stand him. I don't know anything about him, but every time I see his face, I just get upset. So that's all I want to say.
We didn't say who do you guys think is the best conservative?
Oh,
The
best.
best? I mean, I said mine's Jesus Christ because I
My
think
grandma.
conservatism is ultimately religious and tied with our faith. And worst, I think Ben Shapiro is one of the more pernicious elements. And in regards to the one, probably I can't stand to listen to was like the Adam Sosnick of the PBD podcast. But we got Benny Johnson as a vote. It looked like multiple people voted for Steven Crowder in the live chat.
He's pretty bad too. I can give him some credit because he's made me laugh a lot. He can be funny, but he's pretty cringe, and he's done a lot of sus things. So
yeah, very sussy.
Yes. Oh well, yeah. I mean, cross-dress.
Yeah.
Well, my hero is Candace Owens. She just converted to Catholicism.
Yeah, she just got brought in.
I didn't know that.
That's
I knew that she was looking towards some more
Yeah,
traditional.
her husband George Farmer, I think, is Catholic, and then
Correct,
she just
yeah, he's from
converted like
England, yeah.
last week.
Correct.
I think she jokingly said she wanted to be Russian Orthodox or something.
I
one
heard
of
that.
the-
I was convinced that clip was AI. It just sounded off to me. I don't know.
Well,
No,
I mean,
I think it's
Alex
true,
Jones
but
2 days
real?
ago made a comment about how he's going to go to an Orthodox parish. I told somebody because he's outside of Austin to go to Father Moses's McPherson's parish because he's ROCOR and he gets what's going on. That would be a great introduction for Alex Jones if he was able to be Father Moses.
I think Jay should get him somewhere. I think.
Yeah, he should set up that connection. That would be phenomenal. I'd try to tag him in on X, but anyways,
I don't think
Logan-
Jay is the type of like getting people to parishes or something easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Logan, Jim, Ivan, do you guys have any final comments before we hop off?
You can go ahead.
I was just gonna say that I was gonna comment on the Candace Owens thing. I think like when I heard that she flirted with orthodoxy, I was like happy for her in a sense, but at the same time, I'm so tired of these like females like boss bitches like trying to like become figures in the right wing. I always saw her as kind of like an opportunistic pundit with nothing like interesting to say. I think she has like a good instinct, but at the same time, it's like, why should I listen to her? At the same time, it's like nothing important or new. It's just transgressive for transgressive's sake. And like, yeah, let's stop promoting these females that think like they could be leaders. They could be political or thought leaders. Like that's so not Christian. Like women should be a little bit quieter. I'm sorry if I offend anyone.
Ivan, are you speaking out of your privilege right now?
I concur. I concur.
Privilege.
He's making a joke. He's
Make
making a
sure
joke.
she's a woman of color. So I just have to.
Yeah, be careful.
Yeah, that was the point I wanted to make. I'm sorry.
Yeah, be
I'm sorry.
careful. Don't be violating any TOS here. You're putting.
Don't use your white privilege. Stop using
Yeah,
your white privilege.
I wanted to make this point that I think that the right wing always loses when it starts to adopt like these left wing tactics. Like we have this token black guy saying the Republican talking points just to show that we're not racist. So we're having these women speak about the goods, how good the patriarchy is, and nothing against the Wilsons. But I think it undermines the point to have people like Pearl go around harassing people when she's so dumb and so offensive. Like it's okay. I have nothing against her personally. I think she means well in a sense, but she's an idiot. And and if I don't care if she's a strong, independent woman or whatever. Like if she talks to me like that, I'm gonna bitch slap her. So
if you need to, I can be your token black friend whenever you want. So.
Just last point. I know you.
I think TOS.
Like last point. What I'm again.
You should say in a video game every time you say something like this.
In game, guys. In game.
What? Just last point. It's nothing to do with religion. It's politics. American politics. I'm really afraid about American foreign policy run by the neocons. That is, to me, spreading so-called democracy to the whole wide world since 1945, and the people behind that are persons persona non gratas. There you are.
You don't like being in the CIA global empire?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, I love it. But anyway, it is frightening. I don't know. That's politics, but anyway, probably off the topic. But
I'm
look,
black whenever I need to
sign
be.
off. I'll sign off. And look, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks for hopping on, Jim.
Thoroughly
Appreciate your perspective. And
thoroughly
thanks for sharing
enjoyed
your
the
ideas.
stream. All the best, boys. See you later. Bye.
God bless. All right. Logan, you have any final comments? I think you're the last one that hasn't said anything.
Oh, so I came in late. I missed like the first hour, but yeah, it's hard to pick a figure when it just feels like so many of them are so far from what we actually need to be pushing, because they're all so entrenched in the classical liberal Reformation and Enlightenment tradition of basically just materialism with a little bit of faith sprinkled on.
Right.
And so it's very hard to pick out just one that I like or just one that I don't like, because they're most of them are very far from what I would call a good icon of the faith.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Well, hopefully they keep conserving the long tradition of owning the libs. That's going to really be good for
Yeah,
our
that
nation
seemed to
and the
gone.
world.
That's gone really well the last 50 years. Well,
Yeah,
gentlemen,
it's all they
thank you all for hopping on. Really appreciate you guys, and I hope you guys come back in the future whenever we have some more open panels. Just want to thank all the super chats and all the support. And I will be back potentially tomorrow, if not Saturday, going over some of the Orthodox prophecies of World War III. I may be able to get that stuff done. And I think Rachel and I will be on Sunday to discuss Fordham University's push for LGBTQ acceptance in the Orthodox Church. So I will see you guys either tomorrow or Saturday. And if not, then certainly Sunday. So I will see you guys then. As always, until next time, God bless.